Hey, guess what? The mics are live.
That's why I turned around.
I went and looked at his schedule at work.
We're not on there yet.
I made him pay it.
That's funny.
There we are.
There you go.
There we are. Good afternoon, and welcome to the land use meeting of September the 16th, 2021. We're going to go ahead and stand for the invocation by Commissioner Satcher, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Commissioner Bellamy.
Lord, we are grateful to live in the greatest county, in the greatest state, in the greatest country in this world. Lord, we pray that today you would be with each of us, that you would lead us and guide us. We do understand that life is short. Lord, I pray that you would help each of us to value our days and to show our love for our fellow man, fellow women. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I feel like now we should sing God Bless America.
I thought we were getting a prayer from Johnny Cash for a minute.
Oh, it's going to be one of those afternoons, I can already tell. Do we have any updates to the agenda?
Yes, Madam Chair, we have 5 add-ons to the consent agenda. Item number 3 and number 4 are under financial management. Item number 3 is authorization to purchase 8 diesel buses for Manatee County Area Transit. Number 4 is execution of an agreement between Manatee County and Solutions to avoid red tide. Items number 5 and 6 under neighborhood services. Number 5 is adoption of resolution R21-159, authorizing the submission and acceptance of a state aid to library grants. And number 6, approval of 4 letters of agreement for the low-income pool program and intergovernmental transfer and authorization for neighborhood services department director or public safety director to sign the letters of agreement. Item number 7 under Parks and Natural Resources is execution of Florida Department of Environmental Protection grant agreement for red tide management. And under presentations scheduled, item number 2, L3 partner, strictly from the Statement of Rights as worded by state statute. So unless anybody has any questions.
Commissioners, are there any questions? All right, thank you, Lisa. We will, you just hit my button, that's me.
I'm sorry. Oh, I don't have a button.
But that's okay.
May I speak, Madam
Attorney
Chair?
Shank, go ahead.
I'll hit your button for you.
Yes, Madam Chair, I just wanted to emphasize, this is a mandatory requirement to adopt the text as it's written here. If we deviate from it, we have to go through some other exercises. So that's why it's written the way it is, because it's required.
All right, I need to go to public comment. Is there anyone that would like to come forward on this item? No phone calls either? All right, we're closing public comment. What is the pleasure of the board, please?
I move to approve.
Madam Clerk, Attorney Shank, do we need a little bit more?
Oh, I just say approve the motion, the agenda memo, because there's a transmittal.
Right.
Later on, we approve it.
Second.
So we have a motion to approve by Commissioner Cruz, a second by Commissioner Servia. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Madam Clerk, it's approved unanimously. Wow.
Last
we
one.
are like moving along. Everybody should be smiling out there.
Let's see if this one can go just as fast.
I bet this one's going to go as fast, too. All right, item number 2.
Item number 2 is L3 Partnership Gamble Creek Village Plan Amendment, PA 1803, Ordinance 21-17, which is a text amendment, and PA 1804, Ordinance 2118, which is the associated map amendment. And I can read generally what the text amendment is of the future land use element to create a new future land use overlay district known as the Planned Village Overlay, and associated updates to policy for implementation. They are proposing to create development standards of a village master plan and establishing a new future land use category known as agricultural open space. And the map amendment, which is associated with that text amendment, would be for specific property, approximately 5,040 acres from agricultural rural future land use category to the newly created future land use category of planned village overlay district, along with amending the future land designation of the remaining of the 5,040 acres to Res 3, PSP 1, ROR, residential office, retail, MU mixed use, and IL industrial light, and the newly created ag open space designation. They're also requesting to amend Table 5.1 and Maps 5B, 5C, and 5D of the future traffic circulation map series. And for the applicant, we have Mark Barnaby to present.
Okay, and the applicant, Attorney Shank, do you want to mention that?
Yes, Madam Chair, Attorney Barnaby submitted a timely request for additional time to make his presentation on both amendments. He requested a total of 60 minutes due to the size of the project, and subsequently we had discussion, and I told him I was going to recommend the board 45 minutes, because that's the longest we've gone, even for quasi-judicial, and we do have extensive written materials on this item.
If I may ask, is that the time that was allowed in the planning commission meeting?
Yes.
Okay. All right, commissioners, everybody okay with that? All right. Mr. Barnaby, good morning, or good afternoon, I should say.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. By the way, look, if you want to go as fast as you did on the property rights thing and move it forward for transmittal, we'll be done. Let me start. First of all, thank you very much. With me today are Bob and David Lindsay, also family members Ricky, Priscilla, and Rob Lindsay. And let me, oh, there we go. Okay. This project team for this project, myself, Carol Clark, who is a planner, former planning director here, Bob Lombardo, an engineer,
I'm not going to worry about it.
and Alex Anaya, who is our traffic engineer. All right. This is the first step in a multi-step process, and I want to note that this is a request to transmit to the state text and map amendments potentially applicable to any property in Manatee County of 5,000 acres in size, as well as some map amendments that would eventually, hopefully, apply to us. This is the staff report contains a number of specific details they want to address, and we will address those at an appropriate time, but through future approvals, such as the village master site plan, preliminary site plan, and rezoning and development agreements. But right now, the question that's being placed to you is this a concept of interest to the county? And if so, this is the first step in that process. Project specifics. We're talking, this is the largest parcel of land that is developable in the county at this point. It's agricultural. It is by far the largest single undeveloped tract remaining in Manatee County, and it is my understanding in talking with Carol Clark that this is the largest single project that the county has ever seen. So there is an important project for the county. It's an important project because if this is not approved, this is likely to be divided up into much smaller pieces as we move forward. This property is located on State Road 62. State Road 62 is up to the north of this map. And then you can see in the red is the project. In the black line is the future development boundary, and it is on just to the west of this site. This is one of those rare opportunities that the county has. It is an opportunity to set the tenor for what you might want to see in the eastern part of the county. It is an opportunity that is limited in time, and it's an opportunity that I think you will find will promote tourism in this county, as well as an opportunity to preserve agricultural lands permanently in very large amounts. Gamble Creek Village is innovative. It is visionary. It is a planned community for the future versus what I would call unplanned piecemeal development. It is unique to Manatee County, as we'll show you, and it is a once-in-a-generation opportunity, and it would be the antidote to urban sprawl. What we are proposing for Gamble Creek Village, very enthusiastically, by the way, is is a planned rural village for Manatee County, an agri-hood. Now, the Lindsays have owned this property for 35 years. They did not buy it to develop it, but this is a legacy project for them, and it is important to them to see it develop correctly. And the agri-hood is a project that we think meets that criteria. Our vision is a compact, agriculturally oriented rural community. Gives us farm-to-table opportunities, opportunities to have community gardens, and opportunities to have an ongoing agricultural operation within walking distance to homes. The preservation of large and interconnected swaths of agricultural and open space property, and a neo-traditional community center surrounded by lower density development. Let's see. And it is important, by the way, to get this right. What is an agri-hood or rural village? According to the Urban Land Institute, it's a single-family, multifamily, or mixed-use community built with a working farm or community garden as a focus. And according to Paul Habibi, I'm going to get that right, a professor of real estate at UCLA, he says the agri-hoods represent a confluence of economic profits, environmental good, and social benefit, which is especially attractive offer to millennials. Now, having said that, I'm going to tell you, I think it's especially attractive to a whole range of people. And I think you'll see that in just a minute. Agri-hoods were first approved, best I can tell, based on the very reliable internet that we have, in 2013. And there are approximately a little more than 60 nationwide. Most of them are smaller than this one, and this is probably a combination of a new town and an agri-hood. And with that, I want to show you this short video. Some of you have seen this, but I think it's important because it gives you an idea of what we're really looking at here and what we're trying to accomplish. We looked around. Fox News has a good one. CBS had a good one, but this one was shorter. I thought you'd like it better.
Even as you sit at home this morning, perhaps in a traditionally urban or suburban neighborhood, there are people dreaming up a different way of American living. Their vision in the not-so-distant future is of traffic-free cities full of green space, where the only cars are the self-driving fleet carrying us from place to place. We're not there yet, of course, but there is at least one town outside Atlanta whose designers and residents are giving us a peek into the communities of the future. Dylan paid a visit for our Sunday Spotlight.
Impossibly pristine pastures, obscenely scenic neighborhoods, friendly folks that smile and wave. It may sound like the Truman Show. Morning!
Oh, and in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
But it's real. Welcome to Serenbe, a planned community with modern homes nestled into perennial forests. Everything is carefully designed to reconnect its 700 residents with nature and each other. Founder Steve Nygren and his daughter Garni are surprised by the impression that it's too good to be true.
I didn't really know what to expect. And if I'm being honest, I'm like, okay, is this some sort of La La Land? I mean, what is this place?
What amazes me is many people have the same reaction. Is this real? How could you do this? And how sad it is that this has become unusual.
Serenbe, with its 300 homes and 30 businesses, is an experiment in new urbanism, a new model for development blending conservation with urban convenience.
Where did this whole idea come from?
This is a reaction to urban sprawl, actually.
This utopia sits on the outskirts of sprawling Atlanta.
Garni and I were on a run one morning in early 2000, and as we came over the small hill, there was a bulldozer clearing the forest next to us, and he said, "We've just been hired to clear the trees. I guess they're putting houses here. That's what always happens."
So Steve set out on a mission.
This is the bulldozer moment. Your life changing right here if you didn't do something about it. Exactly. This field is part of our 700 acres of permanently protected green space. When my grandchildren are living here 100 years from now, this will always be here. Wow.
A mission to stave off development became an ambitious effort to develop differently.
There was no perception that we would be doing something in the woods that would become a model for how we can disrupt the way we build places today.
By replacing private yards with shared forest and clustering homes closer together, Serenbe's model disturbs more than 60% less land than conventional development, while providing 25% more homes.
I haven't seen a single car. I haven't been on blacktop. I've been hearing the sounds of nature, and all of a sudden we're up against some homes.
Serenbe's winding paths reveal its unique design.
Now, we're back in civilization. Yeah, civilization, and headed to get a cup of coffee at the Blue Eyed Daisy. Often we think we have to choose living in the middle of the country or living in the middle of the city. And so important to us that you can have a little bit of both. Right. Cheers. Cheers.
Cappuccinos and yoga classes are a stone's throw from hay rides and a 25-acre farm.
We all need to be closer to where we're growing the food and the farmers growing it. Eggplant, kale.
Awesome.
The landscape is appetizing.
So 70% of what we planted in grain is edible. Okay, so yes.
And the scenery transportive.
I feel like I'm in like a German courtyard of some kind.
But in the end, the purpose is the people.
I've described before to friends that in our former life, we were more human doings, where it was do, go, in the car. Here we are human beings.
Just walking in the woods and getting lost in the woods that I haven't done since I was a little girl. We didn't know what we were missing because there wasn't anything like this.
The migrants hope there will be more places like this, that Serenbe will inspire others.
Our hope is that the way that we're living in Serenbe is the way everybody can live everywhere, and it just takes a little bit of thought and intention.
Many mornings I walk out our front door and I look at this village in the woods and I think, I was crazy. How could I have ever possibly imagined that we could pull this off? And here we are.
So when are you moving down?
Oh, I'm obsessed with this place. So there isn't another Serenbe planned, but they're hoping that now that they've proven this is a viable model, they can teach other people how to build like this outside of major cities.
Scale it up a little bit. That is really cool.
I loved it.
Now, I will tell you that we have been to Serenbe, several of us. It is an awesome place. It is exactly as they talked about. That video was about 3 years old, and they've developed more of that since that time. They have a mix of housing types, when I was there on a Sunday, it was at 6 o'clock, and they had a bookstore open, their general store was open, 3 restaurants, and they also have a theater that they do occasionally on site as well. And so it is a functioning community, and it is very attractive for people of all generations. And I know several of us who have actually been to that site. By the way, I encourage you wholeheartedly to go there and check it out. I think gives you an idea of what we're trying to accomplish here. So, but when we were first coming up with this idea, before we settled on it, we looked at several things. First of all, existing regulations, which are incremental unplanned expansion, incremental expansion of the FDAB, and those kind of land uses that are likely to go with it, and the Gamble Creek Village concept as well. Our current comprehensive plan allows us to divide this property up into 5-acre parcels. This is a conceptual visualization of that. Each of those, as you can see, it's somewhat disjointed. You would have approximately 1,000 separate 5-acre tracts or small 5-acre tracts. Not, they wouldn't be smaller than that. They could be smaller, I guess, with some clustering, and that is allowed, but you can do this currently without coming back to the commission. You'd have individual septic tanks and wells on each of those lots. You'd have no services such as restaurants, shops, medical offices for miles, and which will require extensive driving. Wetlands under individual control to a large extent. Individual driveways, which would directly go out onto all roads, including collector roads. And the development is not really conducive to pedestrian or other innovative transportation uses. And that's kind of what it looks like. This is Waterbury grapefruit. As you can see, it's not a very, it's fine as a concept, but it is not really planning. We don't think this is desirable planning. In fact, we believe this is the lack of planning. Another alternative is the standard suburban isolated subdivision. This also is okay. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. We have a lot of that here in Manatee County. This is actually another county in the area. Well, what you have is you lack large tracts of open space, large areas for true agricultural use. And by the way, I want to go back to 5-acre parcels as well. You're not going to get true agricultural use on a 5-acre parcel or even a 10-acre parcel. It's just not really possible to do other than maybe a horse grazing. Lack of retail, restaurants, and services within walking or biking distances. It still generates significant trips on county roadways because you don't have things within walking distance. And you lack connectivity and integration. Now, we reviewed the county's goals, looking at your goals for planning the comprehensive plan. You encourage master plan communities. You encourage activity centers. Long-term preservation of open space and agricultural areas. You will want to eliminate the need for individual septic tanks and wells. And part of that is tied to your desire to get rid of red tide. But it also helps your environment all the way around. You're minimizing automobile trips, and development is compatible with agricultural uses. And as we talked about, we looked at Serenbe. We also looked at some other very large and very successful communities. Babcock Ranch, which is in Charlotte and Lee County. Ave Maria in Collier County. Fishhawk Ranch in Hillsborough County. Lakewood Ranch in our own county. And looked and tried to take the best of each of those projects. And we think we have done that. By the way, Serenbe, Babcock Ranch, and Ave Maria are very much in rural areas of their communities. They're very far from urban areas. Actually, Lakewood Ranch was too at one time, but it's kind of caught up to it, as well as Fishhawk Ranch in Hillsborough County. All very successful communities, by the way. So, to do this project, what we need for an agri-hood is mixed use, sufficient rooftops to sustain the mixed commercial usage that make a community, large areas of agricultural lands and open space, and a mix of amenities. And we're proposing several of those, both schools and public service sites, parks and trails that will interconnect the entire development. And as I indicated before, this is a movement growing across the country. Now, Florida statutes, I need to address this just a little bit. New town concept, they don't specifically talk about agri-hoods, but this fits into the new town concept. It is specifically addressed by the statutes. And what a new town is defined in the statutes as an urban activity center and community of sufficient size, population, and land composition to support a variety of economic and social activities. And Gamble Creek Village meets that definition. And the definition also goes on to say that it shall include basic economic activities. And we are including all of those in our mixed-use areas, all major land use categories with the possible exception of agricultural and industrial. Now, in our case, because we're doing an agri-hood, we are including agricultural in a big way, and also an area for light industrial, for economic opportunities for people to work and live in wherever they live. Essentially provide full range of public facilities, and we are going to be providing public facilities and services to capture internal trip capture. And what we are addressing that in a number of different ways, which we'll talk about in just a minute, as well as a master development plan. And we will have all of these items. Urban sprawl is defined as no clear distinction between urban and rural uses, miles of low-density auto-dependent use, and not functionally connected. And that is the opposite of what we're doing here. Gamble Creek Village is the answer to planning in the rural area, in my opinion, and it's probably not a bad idea to look at on the west side of the line as well. We recognize that the agri-hood concept is not provided for in the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan was first written in the 1980s. I can tell you because I was at every single one of those public hearings, which is why I have this gray hair. And it was nothing even remotely like this was mentioned. And as you have gone along through the years, in fairness to staff and to the county commissions before you, it was never considered then either, partly because the concept really didn't exist until 2013, and it wasn't even a twinkle in your eye. So in order to do something like this, we have to do comprehensive plan amendments. But the comprehensive plan does provide that for new concepts such as agri-hoods, that's one of the reasons you have the opportunity to submit for plan amendments, and that's why we're here. The Village Creek, Gamble Creek Village proposal is several things, and Lisa nicely set those out. Text amendments, map amendments, master plan community, and approximately a 30-year building and development period. And I think that's important to emphasize because things we're doing today, first of all, we're not going to start probably for 3 years because we've got to go through several hoops to get there, won't happen all at once. Sometimes people forget that, but that is an important thing to note. It's going to take a long time. It's going to build out incrementally, both roads, sewer, houses, and that sort of thing. And we recognize that, and we've accounted for that in how we're planning this project. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Carol Clark, who's right behind me.
She's got your back.
Literally.
Let's see if I can figure this. Yes, thank you. And I also was at a lot of those hearings and also have gray hair, but I take care of it. So what we are proposing is a future land use overlay district, and that is a text amendment to create an overlay and a map amendment to apply that overlay. And we're applying it in the area that you see outlined here. The overlay text amendment requires 5,000 acres. It has significant details in how you plan with a neighborhood neo-traditional center. It requires that you look at infrastructure, both on and off-site. And this has been used in places like Babcock Ranch. It's been used in Pasadena Hills, in Pasco County, and is a way to look at it. So that's the framework. Within the framework, we are proposing development elements including agriculture and open space, residential, mixed use and commercial, and light industrial. And we think it's important that we have that mix because the mix is what creates the synergy that allows for you to reduce trips and create a community. And I was in Serenbe. Now, I was there on a Tuesday, and that was the day that people came to the village farm to collect their weekly allotment of vegetables from the farm. I was lucky enough to meet one of the farm interns who gave me a tour of the community, and it was fascinating. As Mark said, this is more like a new town than sprawl. First future land use category that I want to talk about is agriculture and open space. And I am very excited about this concept. The creation of this future land use category is something that is significant in terms of being able to actually preserve agriculture, which is one of the county's goals. This is over 3.7 miles. It borders the community, and it has a maximum or a density of 1 dwelling unit per 80 acres. Currently, the areas that you have designated agriculture is 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres. 1 dwelling unit per 80 acres, you can actually have some real farming. Wow. Then we focus on the mixed use areas, and the center village is the hub of the community. It's walkable. You would have multifamily development there where you would have your commercial-focused live-work spaces. And here we are also proposing a school and park site on the north side of BB Road. And this is the hub of the community. And here are pictures that sort of show the kinds of places that we envision being in that center hub. But we've also proposed 3 other mixed-use areas as neighborhood focal points where you can have those neighborhood shops and retail so that it's places that are closer within the community. Surrounding those, we have Res 3. And Res 3 is the Res 3 you know and love. It is exactly the same. Everything that's in the comprehensive plan right now regarding residential 3 would apply in these areas as well. And that's the light green there. And as Mark talked about, we are proposing light industrial of 1.8 million square feet. This is a place to have work opportunities, and it's important to recognize that industrial is associated with agriculture. And this is a place that we can, people that live in Gamble Creek Village can work. We're also proposing retail office residential at 2 locations along State Route 62, at Gamble Creek Boulevard and at the extension of Saffold Road, because that highway commercial is important, and there is a place for that. So that is located up on 62. And finally, we have 107 acres that is in the aquamarine, where we're going to have the centralized water and sewer facilities. Now, this area is surrounded by the ag open space, and as we talk about that, I'm going to turn it over to Bob Lombardo to talk about infrastructure.
It's a face from the past.
What happened?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Good to see you all. I am Bob Lombardo. I'm a consulting engineer, been a resident of Manatee County since 1974, and have designed probably over 1,000 site civil projects, almost all of them in Manatee County. Under sewer infrastructure, the project proposes to construct a non-county maintained or owned wastewater treatment facility to appropriate county standards. What this does is it eliminates septic tank use. And as Mark mentioned before, he showed you a map of a conceptual drawing of 5-acre tracts. And theoretically, you could get 1,000 units here under the current zoning. So we're eliminating the potential of 1,000 septic tanks. That has a major impact on protecting water quality, not only on this site, but all the way down Gamble Creek to the river to the coast. We'd also use the reclaimed water from the wastewater treatment facility for irrigation. You're all familiar with the villages. Apparently it's contained in 3 counties, and Babcock Ranch is in 2 counties. And they are large projects using incremental non-county utility systems. Facilities for major developments like that and Gamble Creek Village are developments that are built to be expanded over time. The design must meet county standards as well as meeting state and federal standards. It's noted that in the document, How Will We Grow, under good ideas no matter what alternative is chosen, page 75 states, consider allowing interim wastewater treatment plants in select areas on a case-by-case basis. With regard to a potable water facility, the project proposes to construct, again, a non-county maintained or owned potable water facility. We would utilize existing permitted agricultural wells for source and eliminate new private non-agricultural wells on the site. We anticipate that the utility systems will be constructed via private funding and a special district such as a community development district. These are proven methods for funding and maintaining wastewater, potable water facilities, and other infrastructure. This site is in the Gamble Creek watershed, wholly in the Gamble Creek watershed. It is not in the Lake Manatee watershed. This is a map of the 2014 FEMA 100-year floodplain for Gamble Creek and its tributaries on this site. It's one of the maps we have to provide with the application. This is now the old FEMA floodplain, and I just wanted to mention this as we did at the Planning Commission. As revised FEMA maps have been recently adopted, I have reviewed the 2021 FEMA 100-year floodplain for this site, and the limits are fairly close to the 2014. Obviously, when any site is developed, you have to follow the most current FEMA floodplain criteria. It's important to note that much of the FEMA 100-year floodplain on this site is located within the proposed AGOS, Agricultural Open Space, Future Land Use Designation. And I'm trying to show that on this slide because I want to point out something to you that we can do that most developments can't, and we're proposing it. You see the darker green areas on this future land use map as opposed to the light green agricultural/open space that's being proposed all around the site. You see the darker green areas, those are the 100-year floodplains. It's the vegetation that hasn't been touched. Well, most projects have to develop the area outside of that floodplain. What you're seeing here is not full development outside of that floodplain. What you're seeing is AG open space. That's important and, in my opinion, better protects some of the floodplains on this site. This site is not located in a designated evacuation zone. It is not located in a coastal planning area. The future land use map identifies a 71-acre site that is planned to be dedicated to the school district for construction of an elementary and middle school and a private or public community park. That's shown on this next slide. The size of the parcel is similar to the size of the current Mills Elementary and Buffalo Creek Middle School site and the adjacent county park along 69th Street East. And finally, Gamble Creek Village will reserve land for public facilities such as law enforcement, fire, EMS, and transit. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Bob. So let's talk a little bit about transportation. We all like to go places. All the roads, the collector roads for this project, in large part, are provided by the county currently. They are currently shown on your future land in your comprehensive plan as being roads that you are planning on doing in the future. What you'll see is the east-west roads, Road BB, CC, and the kind of angular road DD. Those are all in your comprehensive plan currently, as being expected to be built at some point in time. We've added two other north-south roads, Gamble Creek Village Boulevard and Saffel Road Extension, and those are the two roads that run north-south in the middle of the project. To give you some idea how large this project is, the distance between those roads running north and south are about a mile. So it will provide you with a number of access points both in and out of the project and provide better access, for instance, for fire and EMS as they're moving north and south through the county. And we've talked to fire about that. Traffic analysis, we did a traffic analysis using methodology proposed by Manatee County for both midterm and long-term scenarios. Very difficult to really do anything with that at this point because, there's still used to lay things actually out. It's kind of difficult to see how appropriate, but it is required for comprehensive planning. The comprehensive plan amendment addresses transportation staff's concerns through various mechanisms implemented by the village master plan. They will have a external trip cap to ensure that their proposed internal trip capture rates are achieved through our mixed use. I know that's a big concern for staff, legitimately a big concern for staff, but we are going to address that by putting a trip cap on there and make sure that we meet that. We are also doing a number of things, including the neo-traditional community and a number of other things related to that, for multimodal elements and initiatives that will help keep those trips down. For example, some of the innovative things we're doing include the following. The bike paths and walking trails to interconnected neighborhoods and town centers. The text amendment requires us to do wide sidewalks, shared use paths, and mid-block pedestrian shortcuts. We are required to limit our cul-de-sacs. to maximize neighborhood connectivity. We'll only use them where we absolutely have to. Restricting the maximum block length, limiting the maximum spacing between pedestrian and bicycle connections. We also are going to look at forward-thinking multimodal transportation. Because we're brand new and we have the opportunity to do this that a lot of communities don't, that are established, we're looking at an internal streetcar, our own, by the way, streetcar, trolley, or similar transit options. We're also looking at electric vehicle charging stations, bicycle docking, electric scooters, and bike sharing. And allowing for new modes of public transit, such as unmanned taxi facilities, or whatever they call them nowadays. Maybe too old to be taxis, but you get the idea. To take people from place to place. So let's talk about key project evolution points. Okay, the effective date of the future land use area is one of the things, the village master plan and both the financial components and the design principles. Okay, effective dates. The text changes that we're proposing would take effect immediately. The overlay district would take effect immediately for this site. And then the underlying map categories would not take effect immediately. And the reason is we want to make sure that we've set forth things in the village master plan and addressed concerns that are raised, and we're going to talk about that a little more in a minute. And that has to be approved by the county commission before those take effect. If no village master plan is approved, and this is a protection for the county, the property owner will be allowed to develop only at the ag rural, which is 1 unit per 5 acres. But you lose some of the benefits like the ag open space. Village master plan components include a project general development plan, and we'll be bringing this back to you if this comp plan amendment is approved. A financial strategy for infrastructure needs, a financial strategy for additional operating costs, and design components to ensure quality development. In particular, let's talk about the financial strategy. And now, part of this, and this is all set forth in the text amendments, analysis of public improvement capital costs inside and outside of the project. We're going to look at all of those. Analysis of the public facility operating costs. Identification of a financial plan and required regulatory steps to achieve that plan, including stewardship districts, community development districts, special taxing districts, perhaps project-specific impact fees, additional property taxes. And then we also implement many of these things through development agreements. At the current rate of your impact fees for this district, we would have transportation impact fees of over $64 million and total impact fees of over $119 million. That could very much likely go up if we looked at project-specific proposals. We'll also be looking at the design principles, such as encouraging maximum neighborhood interaction and neighborhood forms, including building height, lot configuration, block characteristics, landscaping, and of course, architectural design criterion. I think you've seen that in other projects in the past, and we'd be doing that the same here. The transportation principles, we'd be setting forth, as we talked about, maximum external trips, mechanisms for monitoring those trips, updates of the traffic study that we've already done, now that we have more specific information, building community through walking trails and the other things we've talked about, parks, plazas, and trails, and limiting cul-de-sac and block designs. This all allows us to be more walkable, more bikeable, and makes for a much more better project. The Village Master Plan also has some other things that I want to bring to your attention. It requires workforce housing after the first 1,000 units. It limits commercial uses to neighborhood serving and community serving or agricultural commercial type uses. It reserves, and we think that's important to make sure to maintain the neighborhood character of the project. It reserves lands for law enforcement, EMS, fire, and library services, in addition to the schools and community parks that we've talked about, and requires community gardens. I want to talk a little bit about staff concerns, though, before I finish. Basically, they fall into two categories, timing and sprawl, and timing comes in a couple different ways. First of all, timing from an outside the future development area boundary and public service costs. And I've talked quite a bit about public service costs, so I may cut that a little bit short. It takes planning and foresight in order to address this issue. Development should be noted is right here already right up to the FDAB. This is Bourneside Boulevard. You can see this running kind of diagonal through your screen, as well as State Road 70 running east and west. To the west is UF3, and it is being developed right up to that line. On the right, though, on the left side, more importantly, is you have 1 unit per 5 acres or 1 unit per 10 acres already being developed in that area, and that's happening up and down the FDAB line that you need to be looking at. And the potential there is actually going to increase as time goes on. That does not allow you to do a lot of major planning or master plan communities in those areas once those parcels are divided up and sold off. And so from a county standpoint, this is an important oversight question you need to really consider. You also have development coming in from the north. Not that that controls what you do, but it does tell you that you're going to get development pressures from the north to move forward. What you see here is looking south, so that east is on the left side here. The approximate FDAB longitudinal line is red there, and you can see that the area just to the north, the parish stacks are just on the north side of this page, and you can see development is occurring west of what we would consider our FDAB line if extended into Hillsborough County. This is actually, the red line in here is the northern border line of Manatee County. Parish, the FP&L lake is right in front of you there, and you can see the stacks as well. We're just on the other side of that. And you can see development already occurring right at the county line. Again, this doesn't say that's what's going to happen here, but what it will likely do is cause increased pressure to develop the property somehow on the other side of the line. Will it be 1 unit per 5 acre or 10 acres? Will it be higher than that, depending on what you all do? Or will it be something like Gamble Creek Village? We think Gamble Creek Village is a logical thing to do. The agri-hood concept is new, which requires comprehensive plan amendments. What we have not done, and I think this is important as well, is we have not desired to extend that boundary or provide expansion of utility services in that area. We're going to take care of all those things ourselves, as Bob mentioned. We are limiting this to 5,000 acres or larger parcels. Right now, we're the only one that would qualify for that, but it's possible somebody else might if they can meet the criteria and want to go under what the overlay provides. This project has a 30-year build-out. But planning for this must start now, And the comprehensive plan does include planned collector roads in this area, not only BB, which transects the property, which is yours, CC and DD, as well as the ones we're planning. Manatee County Comprehensive Plan provides that those lands east of the future development boundary are intended for reserve for primary agricultural uses, and we are very specifically reserving at least 3.7 square miles of areas in that category. Public services, we've talked about that already. We're going to provide non-county owned and non-county maintained water and sewer facilities. Road construction, approximately 10 miles of collector roads will be built on site. A park and school site, and a financial strategy for both on and off-site improvements. And we'll address the funding of those constructions and all those things as we talked about earlier. The other thing to consider here, I think that's important, is the agri-hood should be in an agricultural area. That's what they're designed for. You want to be in those areas. It's important to note that the agri-hood, the agricultural open space designation in some locations on that site are 3/4 of a mile before you get to the interior of the site where most of the development's occurring. And the smaller areas is areas that, for folks that already purchased property that knew we were moving forward with this. The area west of the FDAB is building out and is not really appropriate for an agri-hood. Doesn't make any sense to put an agri-hood in the middle of an urban area. So this is a truly unique concept. It preserves miles of agricultural open space. It provides for a neo-traditional community. We have had significant community outreach. We met with the Parish Civic Association 4 times, met with Preserve Our Wildlife Environment and Resources, POWER. We've met with several of our neighbors and local residents. We have a project website, and we have quite a bit of national press. It was picked up by over 70 media outlets, and we got very favorable responses in all of those. In fact, I want to point out the Miami Herald one, how do you prevent more urban sprawl in Florida? This plan goes back in time, as well as the U.S. News and World Report article, Plan to Combat Urban Sprawl with a Sustainable Rural Village Takes Form. And they have fresh ideas to combat the sprawling pattern of development spreading through Manatee County, a compact agriculturally oriented rural community. We think that's very appropriate and very accurate with what we're trying to do here. And you can see it was picked up by places, media outlets all over the place. One of the funniest things that happened to us was we actually had people coming to the site wanting to buy a house there, and our ranch manager had to tell them that it wasn't quite there yet. We've also had social media interaction. I want to point out a couple of these. The comment in the upper right, this concept is amazing and should be how all new communities develop. And then the bottom right one as well. The owners are a local family trying to do something progressive to preserve green space. Currently, the property is zoned to allow thousands of single-family homes. They cannot get a developer until the county approves this out of the box changes. They've spent a lot of money and time trying to get this concept adopted, and if they can't get started on this project, it's going to end up like every other large cookie-cutter community, which we do not want to see happen here. Planning Commission recommendation. We had gone to the Planning Commission twice. The first time, they had a number of comments, and we did not actually get a favorable vote at that time. We reviewed their comments and questions, made an amendment to our plan, and it came back the second time, and we received a recommendation of approval of 4-1. And all of the planners actually stated that they liked Campbell Creek Village. So in conclusion, couldn't make it. This is you have to be over 5,000 acres in order to utilize the overlay. This will be a master plan community over 3.7 acres square miles of agricultural open space. That's not counting your trails and parks. It will be through the interior of the site. Neo-traditional urban core with housing, shops, restaurants, offices, pubs, those sort of things. Reserved areas for schools, community parks, and other needed services. And the infrastructure will be addressed in a county commission approved detailed village master plan before it actually takes effect. Big protection for the county as we move forward. And with that, we'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Commissioners, are there any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Servia.
Well, I was going to wait and see if someone else had any because I've got a long list. Why don't you go first, Kevin?
No, why didn't y'all hit your button?
I'd rather hear from the planner first, to be honest.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Mark and Carol, for a great presentation. This project is probably one of the most exciting projects I've ever seen, but I do have some questions. All right, so we all know Lakewood Ranch. And if we think about Lakewood Ranch, because I was here with you guys in the late 80s when the boxes of the Lakewood Ranch original plans were delivered, and it was way the heck out east, and nobody could even imagine that people would live there. And so 30 years later, here we are, and Lakewood Ranch still struggles to get the commercial and the mix that they needed. They anticipated much more, and it was very difficult to bring that mix of uses together. So how do you see this project being different?
There's a couple ways I think that are important, and we looked at this very carefully when we were designing how we did the project, and I'll let Carol address that as well. I think part of this, the issue is Lakewood Ranch was not as far out as we are as a practical matter, and I think that for that reason, I think our commercial areas are going to be more successful. And oddly enough, it's because not only do you have commercial within the project, but more importantly, you have commercial pretty nearby right outside of the project. And so it's more challenging with our project. You're going to have to more than likely stay inside in large numbers in order to make, because you're just that far away from the nearest restaurant, which is pretty far away if you're aware.
Yeah.
So, Carol, you want to add to that?
No, I don't think that's fine.
Okay.
So, and I think about Celebration, right? There's another great project that we were all excited about. But as I remember, that commercial was subsidized up front so that it was attractive for people to move in there. Because as you know, commercial follows rooftops. So usually you get the rooftops first and then you get the commercial. But Celebration, Disney said, we'll bring in the commercial, we'll pay for it to make it more attractive. Is your team considering something like that?
I think that's possible. I will tell you up front, early on, you're probably going to have, trips moving off the site, and I think that makes sense. But once you get to a certain level, your rooftops continue to increase. The Serenbe project that I just showed you, they have about 900 residents, and they're operating pretty well with the number of folks they have. But yes, it is possible that we may have to subsidize them, particularly early in the project. But one of the things we've talked about, and one of the reasons we've done what we've done, is we put enough houses there. I mean, the population numbers we're talking about here, when it's completed, it will be about the size of the city of Palmetto. Pretty reasonable sized town. And I think that can support a number of restaurants and shops and facilities, dental offices, medical offices, that sort of thing. I have no question about that.
What did Serenbe do? I love the video. Yeah, I want to go there. What did Serenbe do? What was their business model to make it work?
I think part of it was, at least initially, supported by the folks that you saw there in the project. But they also have a fairly good tourist attraction because it's such a unique community. As you saw, there were people that wanted to come there just to be there.
And have you guys done a marketing analysis to understand what the market is?
If we get past this stage, I think that makes a lot of sense to do. But, I mean, it's been pretty expensive to get to this stage in 5 years,
I
frankly.
know, the development is expensive.
It's-
We all
it's-
know that.
We have been told by folks that are in that business that this is a product that will be very attractive to residents. We have absolutely no doubt that will be the case.
Okay, and I heard in your presentation that you may have a CDD or a stewardship district, but you're not sure you
Well,
will.
My guess, if I had to bet, I'd give it about a 98% chance that it is. Maybe if Bill Gates comes down here and wants to do it himself, I'm happy to let him do that. But I suspect that's the way that it's going to make most sense.
Okay, let's talk about the comprehensive plan a little bit,
Sure.
which we're all intimately involved in. Is this leapfrog development?
This is a new town concept, and it is, not in my opinion, it's essentially a new whole community in an area outside of an existing community, and for that reason, I don't think so.
Well, that was a very good answer. Okay. The comp plan requires that we describe a change in circumstances. I think that's what you guys are saying. Can you explain that a little bit more? What is the change in circumstances to support this?
You want to go first?
Yeah.
I'll let you go first. And then I'll follow.
I've been thinking about the changes that have occurred in comprehensive planning and where we are. When I came here and the first residential DRI in Manatee County was Terra. And at that point, one of the key concerns was getting electricity to it.
Wow.
That was a development condition. And the comprehensive plan had an electric utility element. Seriously. Now, of course, we were talking about that at the county commission, the lights went out and we just moved on. But, true story.
True story?
A true story. Okay, let's just go. But a lot of things have changed. And again, when I came here in 1978, the population was 150,000 people. Going out to Rabonia, you would talk about packing a lunch because it seemed so far. And all of that has changed.
Oh, yeah.
The community has grown. We are becoming more sophisticated, and we need to look at that next 50-year increment and what we're going to do. This is a chance we're probably not going to get again.
Yeah, and I'm all about looking 50 years out. I love to do that. But Mark, I'm sorry, did you have something else?
I
you wanted to say?
wanted to add to that. One of the changes is this concept was not considered even as lately as your last major comprehensive plan change. It certainly wasn't considered in 1989 when we were adopting the comprehensive plan. So, so there have been changes in this area, and this area is changing, and as Carol points out, you're going to lose this opportunity because those areas are going to get divided up into very small parcels.
Okay, so let's be real. The three of us have been around this area a long time, this county building. And we've seen all these studies, how will we grow, and the compatibility study, and the list goes on and on. Well, I think we've done 4 or 5. And none of them say we should do something like this. They say we should grow from west to east. So were those studies wrong?
I think they were not aware of this opportunity. And part of the problem is you're not going to plop this down on somebody's property, right? It's got to be something that the property owner is going to kind of bring to you. It was not a consideration. By the way, there were people that thought that there should be areas, because I was involved in those, areas of development on the other side of the line, which makes sense, but in clustered areas. And I remember sitting in a Chamber of Commerce retreat well, it was pretty long ago now, where we were putting little blocks where things would go. And some of those little blocks went on that side.
In the 90s.
And the comprehensive plan does recognize areas of concentrated development that are outside of development areas. Myakka City has had a village designation since the initiation of the comprehensive plan.
True.
Because it's different. It's not the agriculture surrounded. Now, this is going to be a little bit larger than Myakka City and more concentrated, but it's not unlike a concentrated area surrounded by agriculture.
So the Myakka Village is a great example. So how do we ensure that type of model versus, or what you're proposing versus a cookie cutter subdivision of 2,000 homes that develops and different people owning and buying the land, and the vision never really comes together. How do we guarantee this beautiful vision?
Well, we've put several things in both the text amendments, and I know you've read those, the text amendments, which are very specific about things we have to do, the neo-traditional community, the village plan. And then the village plan itself is going to have a number of criteria in there that make sure that you get exactly what we're talking about. And if we can't do that, then you're going to get 1 unit per 5 acres.
And do you have someone on board that's willing to take on the first phase?
I can't, all I can say about that is we've talked to people, and there are people that would like to purchase the property, but they're also watching to see what you do.
I think about Alan Jones, who has the parish center, which I worked on in the private sector, which sits vacant today. And it was kind of the same concept, except much smaller, a much smaller scale. But I don't think the market has hit him yet, and this is west, far west of this site. So, but you're still confident this is different than that?
Well, I think if you look at some of the projects that we've talked about, Ave Maria, Babcock Ranch, Serenbe, those have all been successful projects. We have intentionally made them a little bit larger because, as I said, we looked at projects to see what made sense. We're not bigger than Babcock Ranch, by the way. But as to what makes sense, make sure we had enough rooftops to make it work. And I think we have done that. I think the numbers we're talking about are exactly where we ought to be, frankly, and to make that work. And as I said, when we get completed, we will have a population about the size of Palmetto.
Talk to me about utilities. Can you tell me how that's going to work from day one?
I'm going to let
Okay.
the esteemed Bob Lombardo talk to you about how that's going to work from day one.
I think all 3 of you were at my wedding, by the way, as I sit here and look at you.
We were.
Hello, friends.
We were. Specifically, Misty, what do you mean by how will it work?
Well, I mean, So utilities is a whole special animal, as we know. You have to have a mass of people using utility system for it to work. You know, you've got to have lines that are sized correctly. If they're too big, the water's stagnant. If they're too small, they don't work. Is it going to, you know, what are you going to build up front? What level of treatment are you going to provide? Are you talking about advanced water treatment? Any of those details?
Okay. The best thing to do is to point to other projects rather than what I think. That's why we mentioned the villages. We mentioned Babcock Ranch. Babcock Ranch is a perfect example. They started about 2016 now, I think, and they're being fairly successful, but they're growing. They've actually got schools built now, commercial. Their wastewater treatment facility and their water treatment facility is basic phase one of a regional water facility. When we become the size of Palmetto, we will have a treatment plant to treat the size of Palmetto residents. It is done in phases, but there's nothing wrong with doing it in phases as long as it's designed properly. Mm-hmm. As far as the details of what type of treatment and everything, that I would tell you right now that the treatment's going to be, if we did it today, it's going to be what is required by the state and federal government. And today, and again, I'm not an expert in designing sewage treatment plants today, but I believe that you're not allowed to discharge at all. I think you have to retain everything on site. Now, I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure that is the situation. That has become a very strict, very major restriction on discharging any type of effluent off the site. We're in a position where we have agriculture not only on our property, but if we need other customers, we could have reclaimed water going to other ag immediately adjacent to us if we need to get rid of effluent. So we are not in a situation of a problem with that. So I don't want to get into a lot of detail because a lot of those things haven't been done yet, but I would point to those other projects to tell you they all started, even the villages as massive as it is, it all started from a small project. There's no magic about that. You just design a smaller plant that is fully expandable and has to meet all of the criteria no matter what.
You know, and I look forward to hearing from our utilities staff about how communities like that have worked. Because as someone who grew up in Sarasota, I remember the package plants were a disaster in Sarasota. Of course, that was a long time ago. I'm sure the technology is advanced. I'm sure we have better ways of doing things. But so I kind of have this negative connotation of package plants because they're usually turned over to the county at the end of their useful life, and then they end up costing governments a lot of money. So I'll be interested in hearing how that won't be a problem for us. Is there any bonding that you're willing to do, or some sort of level of financial commitment that doesn't place the burden and the risk on Manatee County? That's something I'll be looking to hear about.
And I can't address those, obviously. And yes, in the Planning Commission and in my meetings with staff, they brought up the issue of packaged plants. And I'm glad you remember what a packaged plant was, because that's not what we're talking about here. Packaged plants were used, for instance, at Cortez Road. There was a restaurant there a long time ago. It had a little package plant designed because there was no sewer. Those type of facilities had very bad history. We're not talking about that here. And as I say, you don't have to believe me. Look at Babcock Ranch. Look at the villages. What are they doing that's right? They're doing it right because if they want a development to succeed, they better do it right. They've just got to do it right. So that, and you have a number of community development districts in this county now, in many projects have gone to that funding source. It is a reliable funding source. They're like little municipalities. So we see those reliable funding sources in Babcock Ranch, in the villages, and many others. So again, that's what I think you have to look at to see how those folks are doing it, and we propose to do it the same way.
Yes. Go
If I
ahead.
can, just let me add to that. We represent Riverwood Community Development District in Charlotte County. They've had a sewer plant for 25 years, works fine. Community's, I think right now, 1,200 units. It's works fine, has not had major problems. And they serve properties outside of the district, actually, because Charlotte County doesn't have sewer in that area. So I think it'll work fine. By the way, Palmetto, as an example, Palmetto has grown over time, and they actually treat water. Their wastewater treatment plant is the highest treatment level in the county, so better than the counties.
It is.
So it's, the county's good, but there are other people that can do it, and some of them do it better.
Yeah, so that's one of the biggest concerns that I'm thinking about that I don't fully understand. I'd like to know more about how Babcock Ranch and the villages successfully did what they're doing. And I'd like to see a model for this project based on the successes of others. So, that's one of the questions, and maybe our utilities department has some more information as they come up to talk. Can we talk about affordable housing? I'm sorry, I told you I had a long list.
I feel like.
So you're going to do affordable housing. Can you talk about that, what that means?
Well, we've guaranteed workforce housing over 1,000. I expect us to do affordable housing because we will have an integrated community. We're going to have people that live and work in the community, have places to live in the community. And part of the issue here at this level of review is, of course, we're doing this for properties that could involve other folks because it's not limited just to us. So we will address that in more detail probably undoubtedly in our village master plan. But we do intend to do both of those things.
It's no secret that that's been one of the biggest challenges that we've faced and we continue to face. And I see it as a bigger challenge out east with the newer communities that have CDDs, that have stewardship districts, that have all these things that, by the time you get just past your tax bill, it's not very affordable to the normal person. And with that, we try and, the healthiest communities are those that are very inclusive and diverse, and not just all retirees from Indiana,
Agreed.
So, no, not picking on Indiana, but,
Just Lakewood Ranch. But it's all
but,
right.
no, I'm not picking on Lakewood
ahead.
Ranch either, Commissioner Baugh. Don't take it personally, please. But that's an important thing because we want healthy, diverse, inclusive communities that all thrive and work together. We don't want enclaves of retirement people.
Well, if you look at the way we've designed this project, you're not seeing an inclusive community per se. Or exclusive. Yeah, I'm sorry, exclusive community, thank you. You're not seeing golf courses, you're not seeing, and not that there's anything wrong with those, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to do a community that is a friendly community, similar to what you used to see in the past, where everybody knows each other. It's available for everybody, and you can go walk and work and come down, get a restaurant, get a sandwich, and or go to the pub as may be appropriate. I didn't really look at you.
All right, I'm
We're
done
getting
with my
trouble now.
questions, and I thank you very much for the
Okay, thank
answers.
you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Whitmore.
I have a half a list of positives and 2 major negatives. So I just want you to think about it because we're going to be here a while, and I want you to help me with this. First of all, I'll ask with a question. On the comp plan, if we do this change today, let's say something happens, does it always run with the property? What you're saying, you kind of alluded to it. So the treatment plant, that would have to be included. All the other things that you said, the land around it has to be open space, and so much has to be ag. Kind of what you presented to us, is that would be the comp plan amendment, and if anybody
Yes.
came along and buy it, they'd have to come before us again?
Yes. In fact, we're willing to put, if we get approvals with the village plan, we're willing to put more restrictions and more, that should be enough, frankly. because it'll have to come back to you, but there are abilities to put additional restrictions on top of that.
Somebody buying it would not have to come back to you, but they would
No,
have to.
no.
Okay.
They have to follow
But
the
they'd have,
rules.
they'd be,
Okay.
it'd be, yes, they'd have to comply with it, yes.
Here's
like
my
anything
other
else.
thing, that the whole reason why I've had concerns about this is the second means of access. Everything's on 62 right now?
We have 62, correct?
Right, but you have these other roads that aren't there yet.
That's correct.
And- But in your comp plan amendment, I mean, are those roads gonna be there before you start? So there is a second means of access, because when I looked on your plans, it didn't look like they were going anywhere, and even if you don't, I don't even know if you own them. Some of them you do, one in the
Some
middle.
of them we do. The answer to that question is this: we're, like any development, we're gonna have to move forward with this. As part of the village plan, we're gonna have to address that. We don't need initially, State Road 62 is gonna be fine for some time. There's plenty of capacity on there, but there's gonna be a point, probably about 8, 9, 10 years out, that we're gonna need additional road capacity. If we can, and we're gonna address a lot of those things in our village master plan. We've got to address how those things are gonna be funded, if somebody else hasn't already done them. Frankly, when you're going that far out, that may be done by then. But we just don't know. But if they're not done by
Maybe
then,
not yet.
yes, I think those responsibilities are probably gonna fall on us.
Maybe not in this stage, but in the next stage, if this first stage goes through, I would expect some kind of documentation that at a certain point, you wouldn't go any further without a second means of access, because from what I've heard throughout the community, that's the biggest rub, is you're going down 62 for
I think-
everybody.
I think that's very fair, and I think that's exactly what we intended to do.
Okay, that's the only thing I have for now. My positives, I'll wait till I see if there's any more negatives.
Commissioner Cruz.
I know.
Yeah. Where did you come up with the I mean, because a lot of what you wrote in here in terms of the text amendment change, you know, I like the fact you're writing this as a village concept as a whole. And you started out by saying, right now, you're the only one who qualifies, but other people can qualify if they cobble together land. But a lot of this is written very specific to this project, like down to a point, and I'm looking at whatever section this is here, I wrote it up. Policy 2.2.2.10, section E specifically says 7,200 residential units. And that's very specific.
It is.
I just had this argument with another attorney a few months ago. Where did you come?
Let's talk about
I'm just saying, because 5,000 is 5,000. This is an honest question. You may have an honest answer, and I hope you do.
I'll give you an honest answer.
No, honest was the wrong choice of words. I'm saying this is.
I didn't take it from
I meant this is an honest question. I'm not. It's not a gotcha thing, because they kind of made it. What I'm saying is, was 5,000 based upon some analysis that's kind of the minimum space requirement to justify the cost of the independent utilities and things of that nature? Because I know we talk about Babcock and villages and places like that. They're very, very large. So is there some sort of analysis or study done that basically says, under 5,000 acres, it's just not cost feasible to do this?
There were several factors involved. First of all, obviously, we have more, at the time, we had actually almost 6,000 acres. That we have first applied. Some of it was sold off, frankly, while we were in this 5-year process. The 5,000 acres was actually a protection for the county. We were trying to protect the county by saying, hey, you may not want this to apply to and have like 500 of these floating around until you see how this one works. So we basically said, hey, let's make it so it works for this project. If you wanted to drop it to 4,000 or 3,000, it won't hurt my feelings one bit. I don't think it makes a difference. I do think you need to have, and some of the other numbers that you talked about, I do think you need to have a big enough, certain number of rooftops, certain types of uses that make this project work. And I think you do need to have that. And that requires a certain size of the project. I would suggest probably at least 3,000 or 4,000 acres. But I don't think the magic was just to make sure that it was a protection for the county more than anything else.
Okay, and I've dug through this, and I'm sure I just missed it. The AGOS zoning, the is it structured in here without me having to dig back through again, because it's not letting me search for some reason, where that's part of the requirement of this, that it's buffered by the AGOS, or is that just specific to the design of this particular project?
I think, I don't know that it's specifically in there. I don't think I think it makes sense to require that. I don't think it specifically says that in the text, but I think that is something that I think makes sense, and we certainly intend that.
No, I know you do. I'm thinking about a different project that if they cobbled enough together, this theoretically could work. But I love the AGOs. I think that's part of what makes this project so great,
Yep,
is
I
that
agree.
buffer, because you're basically you're buffering yourself into the donut hole, and everyone surrounding you is effectively not directly affected based on it. So I just didn't know if it was required, if somebody else did put together 5,000 acres someplace, if they could also say, hey, we're okay with this village thing because we're buffering out surrounding neighborhoods.
Right. And by the way, I appreciate that comment. It was important to us to buffer both inside and outside out. I think that's very important for this project. I will say this, one of the things, and don't take offense to this, please, one of the things the county is not particularly good at, frankly, is getting large tracts of open space in relatively developed areas. They're just, I mean, you can see other places that do it much better than we do. I don't know why that is. I don't think we thought about that at the time, frankly, when the comp plan was first adopted. And this is something that I think, one of the big selling points on this project, appropriately, is that big 3.7 square miles of ag open space.
Great. Okay, that's it for now.
Commissioner Van Ostenbridge?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate Mr. Barnaby, who lives in West Bradenton, bringing up the fact that there's not a lot of open space in the developed areas of the county, as the people out east want to develop every square inch of my side of town before they'll allow any development
That's
on
that
their side of
daggone
town.
Lakewood Ranch again.
Yeah, no.
I'm telling you.
So, at any rate,
Terrible
thank you
place.
for that comment. I'm glad I let Misty go first, because Commissioner Servia did articulate
Good.
some of my questions better than I ever would have, and followed up on them with her background and knowledge better than I would have. Representing the west side of town, this obviously doesn't affect my district as much as it does some other districts, but it does in some ways. Water quality being that number one angle that I'm looking at, and I really don't, and I think my district would support me on this. In West Bradenton, we're not going to be real thrilled about 1,000 additional septic tanks in Manatee County, regardless of what watershed that's going into. It all ends up in the same place eventually, doesn't it? And I like the idea. I think it's a really unique idea. I think it's forward-thinking. There are lots of unique, really cool ideas that I see that I like that aren't ultimately attainable, so hopefully this one is. I don't, think that Parrish needs one more cookie-cutter sprawling community, So this sounds a little diverse and different, doesn't it? And I like that. What percentage of the 5,000 acres, you may or may not know this off the top of your head, Carol may know, what percentage of the 5,000 acres will be left as open space?
Well, let me start with two comments to that, and just, you can confirm, I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this question. Not counting like trails and parks inside of the mixed-use areas, for example.
I would count that, but okay.
And at the moment, we
Number
don't have
doesn't.
it totally done. But the ag open space area alone, I believe, is 48% of the project.
Okay. And so of that open space, you say ag/open space or ag open space. How much of that is actually woods, wilderness, trees, and how much of it is farmland?
I've been out to the site. There's a fair amount of trees there, but most of it's farmland right now. But
Okay.
depending on what happens with the ag in the area, I suspect more of that will tend towards woods. And certainly along both Gamble Creek and Tire Creek, there are significant woods in those areas, and we would be actually planning on putting trails in those areas.
Okay. And, my last statement, Commissioner Whitmore already brought up, but I agree with her. A second point of access is important.
Yeah, we realize that's going to be an issue for us at some point. Part of the question will become, depending on what you all do, and I know you're talking about things out east as they go. But as I said, let's face it, if we're still the only fish in the pond out there 10 years from now, we're going to have to, and part of what we've talked about doing is putting in a provision that says, look, we're going to have to pay to put those roads in.
Sure.
It's going to be our responsibility. Oh, yeah, thank you, yes, and keep in mind, we do have Saffold Road to the north, which extends to the north, and we have traffic heading that direction.
Right.
But it will be a while before we run into that kind of problem.
Sure. And I do still want to hear from utilities. The only other hangup that I have at this point is if sprawl, if the growth does continue in this county and sprawl does make it out to this property, we're sort of making a great big box in the middle of that where we're unable to build thoroughfares, and how will that negatively affect connectivity? We'll have to drive around this massive piece of property.
Well, you'll probably have some local roads in there too, by the way, aside from the collector roads, but as a practical matter, we've provided you a pretty good group of collector roads.
Okay.
Not only the ones you have, but the ones we're proposing to add with
Okay.
this.
That does ease some concerns. And the septic tanks, we were out in Mayaca, we were talking and we discussed the Taylor property and how, that could end up being, I don't remember, was it 3,000 or how many septic tanks? Was 750 septic tanks, that's what that was. And so, 750 septic tanks there, 1,000 septic tanks here. On the west side of town, that doesn't sound good. Yeah.
Doesn't sound good.
On your side of town, right? And there is a market for people purchasing 5-acre plots and building their McMansion and raising their 2.5 kids, and there is a market for that. So, and they could do it right now. So, anyway, just take all that into consideration, please. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, I'm next on the board, and Mark, I probably look at this a little differently than some of the others up here on the board, because I'm living and running my business of 20 years in the #1 selling community in the United States, which is Lakewood Ranch.
I've heard that.
Which is very successful in all aspects. So I look at it from the standpoint that when Lakewood Ranch started, years ago I think it was like 1994. It was really something that everybody was kind of looking at it like, well, maybe, okay, this might work, but we're not sure. And that's the same thing that we're looking at here today. To have the #1 selling community in my district, plus, then I've got Mayaca, which is totally different. And I will admit, I prefer Mayaca, but that's me. I come from Virginia. So the funny thing is that I see this project that you're talking about being able to be a little bit of both. And I find that very appealing. And I think, I think the citizens will find that very appealing. I would tell you, if I was like 20 years younger, I would be going, hey, put me on the list. But that being said, the CDDs and the stewardship that you're talking about, yes, there's going to be bonding. That's how you're going to pay for the roads. I mean, come on, let's be honest here. That's how you're going to pay for a lot of the infrastructure that you're going to need over time. And as you grow, just like what we've seen in Lakewood Ranch, a master plan community, as your development grows, what you add to it as far as other road access and so forth will happen. So I'm not real concerned about that. For me, the main thing that I've heard that I am concerned about are the septic tanks. But I also know that there's a great program out there that Sandy Gilbert knows about that really helps with the nutrients with septic tanks. And I think that technology is something that we're going to hear more and more about here in a very short amount of time. I don't think we have a choice being here in Florida, and Commissioner Van Ostenbridge is absolutely correct. I will tell you, we know that the nutrients is bad for our beaches, our waters, or for the Gulf, and not just the Gulf, but the lakes and so forth. So this is something that's very important, and it's going to have to be looked at. And that is really, to be honest, from everything that I've heard from you, that is my only holdup is the septic tanks.
But we're not doing septic
But
tanks.
you're not gonna have any. All right, I missed that.
Yeah,
You're not
no,
gonna have any?
None.
Now I gotta find something else.
If that's your big holdup,
That is my big holdup, truthfully.
Stop while you're at it.
we're good. We'll stop.
If they didn't build it.
I'm kidding, I knew that. I just had to make a point. I think that it's a very great opportunity for Manatee County. You know what, we do have Lakewood Ranch out east, it's been very successful. We have Mayaca, it's very successful in its own right. And then you've got the totally opposite land, a lifestyle out near the beaches. And this is just another aspect for Manatee County to have us diversify in even another way. So I think this project's very exciting. I remember when you first brought it forward, gosh, how many years ago? Was it 4 years ago, maybe?
Probably about.
4 or 5 years ago? Are there questions? Yes. Is it going to be things that you'll probably have to adjust as time goes on? Yes. But I think overall, it's going to be a win-win.
I'll just remind folks something, I'll quote my wife on this, that the only thing that likes change is a wet baby.
That's right.
And so,
That's right.
and there's, there are things that we're going to have to work through, and we know that, and it's going to be hard. I mean, it's going to be hard work on our part.
Right.
And we're going to need help from staff as we move forward. So we're looking forward to that, and I think it is a great opportunity for the county.
Well, we're sitting back in Lakewood Ranch, with 31,000 acres, I think it is right now. I looked it up because I wasn't sure, and it's more now, but in 2019, we had 36,000 citizens in Lakewood Ranch. Who would have ever thought? So, and it's even more now. And so the bottom line is, you can see that with the projects that have come forward, with the chances that have been taken, we've had some great success in Manatee County. Not because of me, I wasn't here, but because of others, that sit here before me. And, or not even just this board. I mean, SMR has done a fabulous job.
Have indeed.
So, that's really all I have. But anyway, I had fun with it. Thank you. Any other commissioners, any other comments before we move forward? All right, not seeing any. Staff, anything you'd like to add?
Oh, they haven't done a presentation.
No, they haven't. That's what I'm asking.
Would you like a full presentation?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I would like a full
That's what I'm
presentation.
asking. I'm sorry, I didn't use the word presentation. I didn't think I probably had to. But then again.
Thank you.
I'm going to get a sign made that says Lakewood Ranch. The number one selling.
Can we
community in
go
the
to the
United
slide
States.
presentation? Thank you.
I know, I have to.
I won't go through everything. Lisa Wenzel with Comprehensive Planning, Building and Development Services. And again, this is a legislative item. I do not need to be sworn. This is a text and a map amendment. So some of the history with the application, it's been in for a while. Really, I don't think any fault of staff, but it's gone through quite a few reviews. The pre-application meeting was in 2017. The original planning commission was in November of 2019, and as Mr. Barnaby stated, they recommended denial from 4 to 3, and the applicant requested a continuance of the board hearing at that time to go ahead and make some amendments to their application. So the last time it went back to planning commission was April of this year. The vote was 4 to 1. Mr. Rutledge was the only one who voted nay. He was in favor of the project overall, but just felt it was inconsistent with the plan, and he wanted staff to bring changes to the comprehensive plan before reviewing projects such as this. Mr. Connerly did vote in favor of the transmittal, but stated it would allow for further discussions, but the financial aspects were a concern. Again, this is what the site is designated now within the comprehensive plan, ag rural. 1 unit per 5 acres, so essentially they can get 1,000 acres units today. It allows for ag, residential, mining, residential neighborhood commercial uses. public, semi-public, recreation, and school uses. The new text amendment would allow that ag open space 1 per 80 units. The new overlay district would be planned village commercial, planned village, which would allow for 7,200 residential units, 2 million square feet of commercial, and 1.8 million of industrial. They're asking for an exemption to policy 2.1.2.2, which currently says urban sprawl, so they're adding language for an exemption to that. Policy 5.3.1.4 to eliminate the requirement for ROR and MU to be adjacent to an arterial or higher, and then amend the thoroughfare plan to add those 2 new roadways. Some of the changes, why we decided to take this back to Planning Commission in April. Overall, the request was still the same. They added the provision for the 10% of the units to be affordable or workforce housing. They added a requirement for conservation areas of 10% of the site. They added a provision about the effective date of the future land use category, and the county attorney's office did have some comments on that. So if this is a move forward for the adoption, we do need to work with Mr. Barnaby on that language, and we've had that conversation earlier this week. The request was also expanded on for what's required of that village master plan in the future. And the language added, they added language about financial strategy for lands inside and outside of the development. And we also would need to tweak some of that language as well. So as this is a legislative policy decision the board should consider, which I know you know, is it in the best interest of the public? Is it compatible with the development trends and the surrounding uses and densities? And is it the appropriate time? Is it the efficient and cost-effective use of the public infrastructure and services for the county? And looking at a comp plan amendment, some of the requirements that we look at obviously are the comprehensive plan and Florida statute. And as Mr. Barnaby already discussed, the definition for urban sprawl based on the Community Planning Act is really a development pattern characterized by low density, automobile dependent, either single use or multi-use that's not functionally related, requiring the extension of public facilities and services in an efficient manner. And then Florida statutes, 163.3177 talks about future land use elements should discourage the proliferation of urban sprawl. And the primary indicators of a plan amendment that does not do that is if it's substantial distances from the existing urban areas, if it fails to maximize the existing future public facilities and services, and timing. We have to look at the increase in costs and time, money and energy in providing and maintaining facilities and services. And if it fails to provide a clear separation between rural and urban. And I know everyone has seen this map before. This is within the comprehensive plan, just generally designating the lands west of the future development boundary line and the ag to the east. So with that, I will let Clark Davis talk about the traffic study.
Good afternoon. For the record, my name's Clark Davis. I'm Deputy Director of Traffic Management for Public Works. The traffic study was prepared on the premise that this would serve as a planned village area. It's a more independent community, and the concern from a staff level is that while this is outside the FDAB, it's not very far outside of it, but the land in between is either sparsely developed or undeveloped. And so the question is, how do you make a sort of self-sufficient community that stands on its own in proximity? And if you don't, what is the cost of extending infrastructure into it, sort of that organic growth into an area, as opposed to, people have characterized it as leapfrog development, but we've seen that inside and outside the FDAB, where we've jumped over vacant land to do other land, and it costs us more because we have it costs us more. We have fewer customers per foot of pipe or a road or whatever the thing is that we need to serve the development. And so similar concerns are here. And so the study looked at it as if it were more or less an isolated community. It should be self-supporting, so you've got a balance of jobs and retail opportunities and services that complement the residential development, so the trips stay inside the development. And the study was based on that theory. It was a good study of that type of development. However, the comprehensive plan amendment text doesn't ensure that form. It leads to a study or master plan or something where it could happen, but doesn't create the certainty that it happens. And so staff's remaining outstanding concern from the comp plan amendment before it was brought forward is that either the policy language needed to be tightened up to ensure that it was more closely matched with the study, or the study needed to be revised that could take into account greater impacts that might exist if it didn't achieve the form that was being described. The short-term analysis of the study talked a lot about achieving a high level of internal capture early on. It's an okay assumption, and getting it wrong isn't a high cost because early on there won't be that much development. So if it's not trip efficient, it's still not going to be a lot of trips because there's just not going to be much development there. So that kind of stuff can balance out over time, but it does need to grow into that form over time. As I was talking about, policy structure doesn't line up with that, the premise of the study, as well as staff believes is necessary to support an amendment like this. The network, and I think Mr. Barnaby was showing you this in his presentation, that's needed to support it. There's about 22 miles of off-site roads that are needed to support the development, and about 10 miles on-site. I could walk you through the math, but if you just assumed that a road cost about $8 million a mile, the 22 miles off-site plus the credit-eligible portion of the roads on-site would run somewhere in the ballpark of $200 million, and they were talking about impact fee generation in the ballpark of 65. So we need more development to occur between the existing development in the county and growing out to here to support those kinds of roads, or some other form of commitment to ensure that all the infrastructure can be provided. And then these last two slides are just showing the list of the roads that are needed off-site and on-site. And that covers that. I think Mr. Goodwin wants to talk about utilities.
Thanks, sir. Afternoon, Commissioners. Jeff Goodwin, Deputy Director of Utilities. So to start off, I guess a couple of things have already been mentioned, but we'll just repeat them. The planned development is outside of the utility service area and therefore not a part of the utilities master plan or any of the future build-out scenarios. So I think that we need to let that be known first and foremost. And secondly, the planned development will be served by non-county owned and maintained water and sewer systems, and therefore utilities would not have jurisdiction. Now, I think for the conveyance infrastructure, that might be a little different, but for the treatment facilities, that's certainly the case. And so we wrote down a couple of things, and I think Commissioner Servia asked some good questions and communicated some good concerns when it comes to these types of private facilities or non-county owned facilities. The first is it's inconsistent with the historical policy of centralizing water and wastewater treatment. Over time, Manatee County has acquired private treatment systems in its service area and has established a healthy, centralized treatment system. And it's in today's utility world, it's kind of how we all think. We're looking to centralize all of those facilities and have them all under one umbrella. So intuitively, when utility staff hears that, it kind of goes against our way of thinking. The second thing from an historical perspective, O&M funds, O&M needs are often underfunded. Private facilities are not designed or constructed to the same standards often as public utilities. Now, the applicant has committed to constructing them to certain standards, and that's good. And certainly the technologies have changed over the years. I think probably the suggestion about bonding those, particularly those treatment facilities, might not be, or might be something that we want to explore a little further, and maybe some more information about some of the examples they've shared. I've not looked into, for example, Babcock. I know it's been there for a very short time from a utility standpoint, and I don't know that it would make a good example of, a successful utilities implementation, a non-county owned utilities implementation. I think there'd have to be some more time to go by before we could make that assessment. And some other examples that they shared, maybe how they implemented and phased in those treatment facilities. If the applicant could share some of that, certainly our staff could, and our engineering group could help review that and opine further for that, on that for you. So if the rates are not appropriately established up front for the O&M needs, then they're very difficult to get those changed later. The Public Service Commission is the regulated entity for these types of facilities. And once those are established, they really take the side of the residents in keeping those rates very, very affordable. And sometimes they're not at the level that they need to be to maintain the facilities properly. Again, that's from an historical perspective. Things may have evolved over time. I have not researched that in some of these newer type non-county owned facilities. So I think perhaps we could put that on the applicant and allow us to review that a little better. And then the other thing about historically our experience has been that most often when these facilities have reached the end of useful life, the residents are going to come to us. They're going to say, you guys approved it. You have a nice, healthy utility system. Why don't you absorb it? And it's going to come it can come at a very big cost. That's been our historical experience. Now, we have not had a private system like this that we've acquired in decades now. So again, the technology may have improved. They may be able to build it and operate it and maintain it to a point when we do, when we do reach that far out east, it's not a big burden for the county to take it on. So I don't know that we have enough information to say yes or no. I will just share that our experience and our colleagues' experience is pretty consistent with what I got here in my bullet points. It's usually the county that takes on the burden of the cost to take over these facilities. Any questions for utilities?
I've got some commissioners on the board. Are you guys done with your presentation? Is that it?
Just Tom Gerstenberger.
Okay, well, let's wait until the end,
Yes.
Jeff, if that's okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and fellow commissioners, County Administrator. Thomas Gerstenberger, Public Works Department, and I will give a brief presentation regarding stormwater and water quality. As Mr. Lombardo has already alluded to, this particular development in its entirety is within the Gamble Creek watershed. If we go to the next slide, I'll actually use this as a good example. This map illustrates the project itself in yellow outline as compared to Gamble Creek as a whole. This particular project, given the size of this particular project, it is 14% of the entire Gamble Creek watershed, predominantly located in the upper reaches or the headwaters of this watershed itself. If we can continue on, please. Thanks. As Bob also alluded to, the flood insurance rate maps for Gamble Creek watershed were just updated as part of a recent firm map amendment. So essentially the floodplain delineation that was provided by the Gamble Creek Watershed Management Plan has been adopted and implemented into our flood insurance rate maps. And here's the map example of what that 100-year floodplain delineation looks like with respect to the project itself. The next slide goes through what we would typically see as stormwater design requirements for any development within Gamble Creek watershed, whether it be for flow reduction requirements, 100-year floodplain mitigation, modeling of a variety of single-day and multi-day storm events, and in particular, the dedication of drainage easements and flowage easements on any of these drainage systems which are conveying runoff from either public right-of-way or from public facilities. With respect to water quality, Gamble Creek is an impaired water due to fecal coliform. The impairment extends from the headwaters down to the confluence with the Manatee River. And as we've already been discussing, whether it be for septic systems or for wastewater treatment systems, that further analysis is required to account for nitrogen and phosphorus loading and other pathogens as part of the design of any of those systems. And with respect to predominantly with Manatee County as a whole, the groundwater table, the seasonal high water table, is at such a high level or compared to ground level. Typically for Manatee County, the seasonal high water table, given this time of year, is typically within 1 foot of the ground surface. So that is essentially why we see as part of any design, especially with septic systems, that you'll see a mounded system where the drain field itself has to be built above existing grade for a septic system to even function. Lastly, as far as water quality, this particular area is outside of the county's NPDES permits as far as our stormwater management plan, as far as our typical certification that the county goes through for water quality. As far as the Tampa Bay Regional Assurance Plan, Tampa Bay itself is impaired for nitrogen, so certainly that would need further analysis as far as the removal of nitrogen with respect to not only stormwater, but for the centralized wastewater treatment system. And finally, as I alluded to earlier, Gamble Creek itself is an impaired water in accordance to Chapter 62-303 of the Florida Administrative Code. And that's all I have.
Thank you, sir. And is that the end of your presentation?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to recess for 10 minutes. All right, we are back in session. I've got several commissioners on the board. First is Commissioner Satcher.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is this questions for staff, or is this deliberations?
This is, actually, I probably should have gone to public comment, but anyway, it's for applicant, staff, or staff.
Okay. How far is the western boundary from the FDAB line? I'm sure it was said sometime during the presentation, but what distance are we talking there?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Satcher, approximately 2 miles.
I'm sorry, what was that?
2 miles?
2 miles, okay.
I think I have the most questions for the applicant, so maybe if,
I need the exercise, Commissioner. I'm happy to come up.
right. So I'll try to pick the ones that, so as of now, we're going to have the undeveloped land on the outside with the donut of the development on the inside. How much access is there going to be between the two? You mentioned the trails, but, you know, one of the things, because I have to balance this, you know, each application that comes before us, especially if it's in my district, I'm trying to balance because we know growth is coming, period. And so I can't be, you know, with my finger in the dike, it's not going to work. It's going to happen. So therefore, I try to zone in on quality whenever I can. So these open areas on the outside are the, you know, people that buy the units on the inside. Are they going to be able to access and enjoy those, or is it kind of the set-aside 80 acres is just something you drive by as you come in?
Well, it's going to be a combination of agricultural areas and open space, particularly I think it'll eventually all turn into open space, and it's all going to be accessed by the residents. The open space, the agricultural operations, let me put it this way, the agricultural operations, you know, may be leased out to somebody or may be owned by somebody as a operating farm, and, you know, obviously you're going to have some restrictions on going there, but they will have access to get at least right next to it, and we're going to have trails appropriately placed so that you can access those areas and walk by those as well.
And you mentioned the village farm in Serenbe. Is there a plan for anything like that here?
Yes.
Set aside?
We are required to do community farming as well within the main portion of the development.
Okay, and then it seems like, just judging from the pictures, you're kind of seeing this as more of people are going to have their scooters or their golf carts. That's what you're looking at. So there's not really a, you know, Sarasota Country Club or a, Panther Ridge, where you're going to have horse trails and a stable on the outside of your donut or in the middle of town.
You could do that. Let me kind of take it to, because
I do see it
big
might be
difference
one or the other.
between we're not planning on I don't think there's any plan to have like a golf course community, that sort of thing. All right. So we may have a horse trail. We may have horse trails on the outside.
Great idea.
Club is what I meant.
Because that's tied to agricultural operations, and I wouldn't be surprised about that at all. If that answers your question.
That's a great idea.
So if this were to, you're at 5,000 acres owned right here, so you can, by right, build 1,000 homes, correct? That's your, without anything, without needing any approval from us, approximately. Yeah, you'd have to put in roads or whatever, but pretty close to 1,000 homes. And then, I mean, the FDAB, if it was Res 3, we'd be talking 15,000. So you're asking half that.
Correct. I think that math is right.
If it seems I'm going to ask some questions that are pro and con, it's because, I mean, I see both sides of the situation. What kind of guarantee do we have as far as, I shouldn't say guarantee, commitment,
if you get approved for, your first 1,000 units, or you've got the 7,200 total, do we have right now a commitment as how many of that is going to be apartments, and how much of that would be duplexes or villas or single resident?
We have not gotten to that point, except in a couple areas. I want to note, in your text amendments, there is a requirement that the first 500 units must be in the neo-traditional area, one. And two, there's a requirement that we have to have a certain amount of commercial once we reach 1,000 units. And so we are planning on doing that. I actually think it'll be higher than the number we have in there, but I wanted to, because it affects other developments. Generally, just so you know, I was at an EDC breakfast a few years ago, and Hank Fishkind said that for 1,000 units, you need about 80,000 square feet of commercial at that point, and so, if that helps.
Well, I don't know if it helps. I love the vision that's being offered, and I, in some ways, feel bad because y'all came to me right after my election.
That was early.
And so, I saw the vision and I was really excited about it. Some time has passed since then, and I've had a lot of developers come to change things from what was initially proposed to a previous commission. And so that's just what gives me pause, because sometimes, hopefully you have the best case scenario, but sometimes you don't. So currently, right now, you could either do, say before you have to do any commercial, build any commercial, if you wanted to do 1,000 units, you could do 1,000 single-family homes. But then also, you could do 1,000 apartments.
Well, are we talking about
Apartment
with
units.
the comp plan change? Currently, we can do 1,000, up to 1,008 single-family units, period. Right? Without ever coming back. We will have to come back to you on several levels with what our plan is going to be as to how that's going to be developed. The village master plan, which will include a general development plan level, we'll have to come back to you because it's all going to be plan development. We're going to have to come back to you for preliminary development plan review as well. So on top of that, so you're going to get a chance to, or maybe not. As far as I know, we were. Thought I was. If not, great. And so you will see this again, but you will see this again before anything's approved, before we can do anything on there from a vertical standpoint, absolutely. And we'll have a plan, we'll figure out, it's probably going to be a mixed, Commissioner, initially, is my guess.
And then, best case scenario, you build your utility plant and it works wonderfully and there are no issues. Worst case scenario, you run into problems, something can't work, or you can't, there's too much money involved to make it work. So if your utility were to fail, is there currently how are we protected? Is there going to be a bond on that would help cover the cost of that? Or is that something, mining, when they're mining and there's a chance of failure right now, they're required to have a bond. Is there anything like that proposed?
Well, that has not been suggested as of yet, but let me suggest this. One, first of all, we're designing the facilities, the distribution system, everything to county standards, or state or federal standards if they apply. So you've got some protection in that regard automatically. So to that extent, we're going to keep going. We're obviously going to have, which has worked marvelously in other communities, we're going to be having a financing system that should be able to handle that. And so we're not going to design it for something that can't be handled by that community development district.
Yeah. And I don't remember what meeting we had taken place, but I do remember meeting someone that had run smaller utilities, and it seems like for Auburn or something like that, for a large college or a small community. He did say that this kind of thing was possible and could be done, but I do know our county staff has some concerns. The roads, what already established, or the part of Parish that's built right now, we have tons of roads where you're just going in the right direction, and then there's a neighborhood in the middle of that road, and you can't get where you need to go without going all the way around. So when you're showing those roads, would those be gated roads, or you're going to be able to get wherever you need to go in the future?
We have no plans to do a gated community at all.
So, okay, but
And
I won't, see, now, we have no plans. Like I say, I've just been here long enough that sometimes plans change. Do we have a guarantee that there won't be gates on at least the roads you showed us, at least those blue roads?
On those are all going to be collector roads that are dedicated. They will not, there's absolutely no gating in those areas. Absolutely will never.
And that's what I assumed, that's what I hoped, that's what I wanted.
Thank you for clarifying that.
But I just want to be sure that we don't, it has happened, you go up Victory Road, and then there's Colony Cove, and you cannot get, to the other side. You can't get to 69th, and so.
And if I might add something to you, though, let me also comment. With the current zoning that's on that property, you're more likely to have a house or a group of houses in the middle of areas where you want to get through than you would otherwise. Much like you see in Pomelo Park or Waterbury Grapefruit. You can't get from here to there very easily. And this would actually, with a planned community, you would be able to do that much easier.
Legitimate point. So, I don't think I have any other questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Van Alstenbridge?
Actually, I have one more.
Oh, wait,
Is it
one more. Go ahead.
I surrender the
One thing that has been fashionable of late is set aside land that was set aside as passive park in different developments. If there's any type of acreage, then it comes back before us to approve building, new homes in that. Sometimes some of the applications have been where they've already been approved to have those units, so they're going to go somewhere. And some of those applications have been where they don't have the units approved, but because there wasn't an actual, the realtor says, oh, that's going to be a park, but it's not committed by the developer. So there's quite a lot of green space on the outside of this, which on the surface is exciting, right? But that also sets it up to where if you've got someone that owns, say, 2 of those tracts, so they've got 160 acres, and they can't come to us later and want to, change the zoning, separate out from this, is that precluded? Is that not allowed under what is already before us? Or would we need to take additional steps if that is a concern that we have, that say 10, 15 years down the road, we'll be asked to approve more units on the outside of this, so really all it is a high-density area?
Yeah, that's a legitimate question and concern. There are 2 levels to that answer, and I've talked with Lisa about this question. You have a comp plan. Obviously, any changes from the comp plan will have to come back to you under any scenario. With the approval of the village plan, I think we could provide you with I'm not sure what the right word would be in this case, probably a conservation easement of some sort that requires them to keep this in the uses that are allowed only under the ag open space. And so that would commit it even further than what it would normally be committed to. But we've got to get the village plan approved, because otherwise, if we don't get the village plan approved, we don't have anything, so.
Right. Okay, no further questions, thank you.
Commissioner Van Alstenbridge?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Satcher and I think Commissioner Servia made statements as well about the applicant being able to guarantee, certain promises, I guess, if you will. But I don't think I'm wrong when I said that we're just doing zoning today, correct? Transmittal. To a certain extent, aren't we leaving it to future boards? They could always come back and ask for changes anyway, but to a certain extent, we're leaving it to future boards to hold them to the statements that they're making today, right? Okay. I'm just making I'm not trying to combat anybody, I'm just asking and making an accurate statement.
Can
Are you asking, are you talking?
I'll default to the attorney.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, sharing the same button as I had. That's what- I was allowed to push my button.
We don't have enough money to have two buttons.
I was going to ask Mr. Blondby, so I'll just state on the record, we had conversations this week with Mr. Blondby and Lisa Barrett regarding, the implementation mechanism for a lot of these issues. And then I was going to ask Mr. Blondby to commit on the record that he'll be addressing my March 3rd, 2021 memo, which I made 5 points, and I just have to outline them. One was that we would need to add text to the amendment regarding the applicant will be entering into an agreement to agree not to apply for FDEP permits for any septic tanks. We don't regulate septic tanks, but they can agree not to apply for permits. That's how we would do that. And secondly was, we would add language regarding, the reserving the acreage for educational facilities, parks, law enforcement, EMS, fire and library services would need to be subject to further analysis based upon appropriate studies demonstrating that the acreage required or reserved within these sites is roughly proportional and provides a rational nexus to the impact of the proposed development within the PV flock upon these public facilities and services. Thirdly, the determined impact fee surcharges has to be further refined. Fourthly, I had concerns with the Parish Commercial Village Overlay Master Plan being conditioned upon implementation of financial strategy. The word condition was an issue, but we were going to refer to separate agreements, such as local development agreement, to show how that's going to be implemented.
Okay.
And then finally, on the effective date, I think that needs to be further refined because the state statute talks about a 31-day challenge period and then becomes effective. This has to be addressed in the ordinance text. I think Mr. Blondby is aware of these issues, but if it is transmitted today, I just want that on the record. And Mr. Blondby's acknowledgement, we'll work on that for adoption.
We'll work on that between now and then. We actually have come to an agreement pretty much on the language changes that need to be made, and yes, I don't have a problem with that.
So, Ms. Schenk, while I have you, 48% of the property will be ag, but 10% will be conservation?
Well, I discussed Mr. Blondby, he's really the author of this. We were going to look at conservation easements, and some reference to the implementations, how it would be implemented in the text amendment.
Yeah, and I guess when I look at the map and I see green space all the way around it, conservation is where my mind goes. But it's not conservation.
No, it's ag open space, and intentionally we created this category because it's going to be ag operation. Now, what I think we can commit to is, assuming the village plan is approved, we can commit to that remaining the uses that are ag open space forever. The problem is, at this level, I don't have that document in front of me because it doesn't exist. So we're happy to do that. By the way, we do have a requirement that at least 50% of the
She's always got your back.
I knew she'd be here a second ago. We knew at least 10% would be a true comprehensive, not even no ag, just at least 10% would be conservation on its own. And
It's 500 acres, and that's not a
yeah,
small,
that's a lot.
right,
That's a lot.
not a small amount.
And but go ahead.
Well, 50% of the, not necessarily this project, but 50% in an overlay has to be open space or conservation or agriculture. There's no requirement that it be ag open space, but this project is proposing the 47%, 48% in the ag open space area.
Okay. And then my other question is for Jeff with utilities. Sorry, I should have given you a heads up that you were going to be next, Jeff. And as you're coming down, I can start asking my questions. So my question is going to be, because I know that in my district, and I think Commissioner Servia's district, we have 55-plus mobile home communities. They popped up in, the 70s. It was a super popular thing. Moved to Florida, set up a trailer, wait for the tornado. Yeah, then you get your TV interview. So, I think that is historically where the county has taken over private sewer systems, and am I correct?
It is. Well, when we're going back a ways, so there's still private utilities out there, but they're all about the underground, the pipes, and the pump stations and appurtenances. There are no private treatment systems in Manatee County anymore. we've taken over all of those.
Okay.
So-
Where were, I guess my question is, where were those, and, you know, can you give me some examples, I guess, especially like the most recent ones that I would know
Yeah,
of? I'm only 40.
now, most of these were gone before I got here. If Mr. Simpson was still around, the Oracle,
Yeah,
he
yeah.
could give us the whole history, but Colony Cove comes to mind.
Okay.
And there was a package plant there, and it was so close to the river that we got pressure from the regulatory agency to take it over. And that's another pressure that we could face if those start to fail, is the regulatory agency say, hey, Manatee County, you can do this.
Are there any specific standards that, I'm sure you've discussed with them, but are there specific standards that they have to meet, that you know, certain, you know, how high is the bar raised that makes you all comfortable?
I'm glad you asked that, Commissioner, because during the recess, the esteemed Mr. Lombardo caught me, and he's. Oh, did I call him Commissioner? No, I called him Mister. Mister, I called him Mister. And apparently I may have created a little confusion. So when it comes to the underground infrastructure, that is the conveyance pipes and the pump stations and those appurtenances, we have utility standards that are clearly defined, and we can hold them to. That's really not utilities' concerns here. It has to do with the treatment plants. We don't have clearly defined standards for the treatment plants because we like to be able to take advantage of technologies as they come up, and we don't do big changes to those facilities very often. My point is that we wouldn't have oversight if they were doing this as a modular type of a setup, which we've seen before. They may want to come in with a metal tank, which we would not want. We would want it to be concrete. We couldn't come in and say, you have to do this. We don't have the jurisdiction.
So the concern is less with the initial build-out and more with long-term maintenance?
I think there's a little concern about both.
About both?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so what could we do with with long-term maintenance, there's not a whole lot we can really do. We can ask them to like bond the thing, you know, in case there's an issue down the road. But with the initial build-out, can we set certain standard? I mean, I've got to know the Lindsays. They're pretty reasonable people. They want to see this project be successful. I would imagine that they would be, you know, open to suggestions.
We likely need some assistance from our engineering group, but I think that could be conceivable.
And so, to Sarah Shank, how would we go about guaranteeing that?
Well, actually, it's a burden on the applicant here. When they have to submit, Mr. Bond is hearing this discussion.
Sure.
And he knows before adoption what your issues are, and he should be submitting some text to the comp plan to give us an implementation mechanism on that.
Okay.
And if we could look at some of the examples a little closer that they have shared as being successful facility implementations, we could opine on that. That could be helpful.
Okay, because I understand where you're coming from, and I don't, you know, the roads were a concern, you know, connectivity was a concern of mine, and then the other concern was I don't want to leave this so that in 50 years, it's a big financial burden to whoever is sitting in this seat, and they'll say, man, that short, bald guy really screwed me here, didn't he? And I don't want him to say that. So.
Sarasota County has recently just overcame all those challenges. We were fortunate to have done it a while back, but it is a burden.
Okay.
Can be a burden.
Yeah, but I'm torn, right? Because I also see the project. I love the project. It's a great
Sure.
idea. So.
And we'd be willing to help any way we can.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Great. Commissioner Whitmore.
Jeff, stay. I've been thinking about this, and I had really strong concerns about it, but everything that I had concerns for, it has been addressed. And I'm hearing that actually the community's bought into it, you know, and nobody's here, which this is one of the biggest projects since Lakewood Ranch, which totally surprised me. A couple questions. My years on the island, the NPDES permit. Do we have to submit that per law to the state? I know every jurisdiction does. I think every jurisdiction has a thing with you that you have to submit it to the state. But what will we do on something like this? Because you said this is outside of our purview. So how does the state do all that if we have something for the permit for discharge?
I'm going to have to let my colleague Tom speak to that.
because this is different for us. And I know Babcock's done it and the villages, so there has to be something that we can follow, but.
Sure. Good afternoon. My name is Scott Browning. I'm with Environmental Protection of the Parks and Natural Resources Department. Yeah, so the county has an NPDES permit like most counties have. This development is currently outside of what Tom mentioned as our stormwater management boundary. That's what we consider as the area that we maintain roads and report on our pollutant reduction activities. So this is slightly outside that one. It's slightly outside of that boundary, so it would have to be incorporated into it. And we also have a monitoring program, a surface water monitoring program that's incorporating that entire metropolitan area, and it would have to be expanded outward somewhat to incorporate this development, so.
So they would, of course, it's different than like a municipality, would the project, the applicants have to provide you that data to go into your permit with the state, or would our staff be required to do that?
We could extend it with their financial assistance, or,
Okay.
and, you know, under our direction. They may also choose to possibly go as a Phase 2 permittee themselves and get permitted
Okay.
with an NPDES.
So just, we have to remember all this if we decide to do this. Also, the waste, you were saying that Gamble Creek is impaired? So farmlands and ag is the worst thing that can flow into our water system. So would this help improve it?
Well, that would be one thing that we'd want to see from them is there no net gain or net increase in pollutants? And so that basically the pre-development loading rates are the same as the post-development loading rates when it comes to pollutants such as fecal coliform or nutrients or any others.
And if it increased, you would have issues with it, and this would not happen?
They would
or-
need to implement some procedures to reduce loads from some other source, from some other means. Again, they're within the Tampa Bay Estuary Program's reasonable assurance area, so.
Right, okay. And then, Jeff, you're here, Daryl. You said that you haven't seen anything like this in Badcock. It's may not as big as this, but what about the villages?
Yeah,
'Cause you mentioned the
I
villages
haven't
has it.
researched it, Commissioner. I have to look into it. I think those are probably better examples than some of the ones that I heard, like Reedy Creek and Palmetto, which
Mhm.
have big funding sources behind them, and not just a CDD, but I'd have to look closer at those to.
And you also mentioned while you're here, I think it was you, the state applies for the permit. I mean, once they apply for the water rates and the wastewater rates, it's very hard to change them. So how can we assure that we don't get stuck with it later? By bonding or what?
I don't know that I'm the one to speak to that, but that's a potential way.
Maybe the
yeah.
applicant?
Yeah. Our experience, our observations with the Public Service Commission is they stand up for the ratepayers on these private systems and try to keep those rates very, very low.
Which we don't really want because they have to maintain.
If they're underfunded initially, they can become a problem, yeah.
Okay, so I'm sure Mr. Barnaby's a up and guy, and he will, this is a process, and it's not a handshake deal anymore. Maybe years ago it was, but I just want to make sure that that's addressed. Okay, and did you want to
Chair.
add something?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes, Carol. Good afternoon.
Oh, it's Carol.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Commissioner Whitmore, sorry. Madam Chair, Commissioner Whitmore. Let me use one local example of a region of the county that actually has a MS4 Phase 2 permit, that has community development district in place and a stewardship district in place to maintain not only their roadways, but to also maintain their stormwater facilities. It's Lakewood Ranch. So
Sorry.
this theoretically could be another example of a
But we don't want, yeah.
agri-hood municipality outside of the development area, outside of the county's NPDES permitting, that has their own permitting, that has their own water quality permitting, such as an MS4 Phase 2 permit, such as DEP permitting for wastewater treatment facility. So either through county permitting, either dovetail to county permitting, or on their own separate permitting, they would be addressing water quality both with respect to stormwater and wastewater treatment.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And then real quick, what my positives were wastewater treatment instead of 1,000 septic tanks. Yeah, reclaim water. And they were talking about multimodal. Again, I had gone to John Neal's project, and they actually had these bike racks all over the area where you just put in a pass or something, and you get a bicycle, and you go to the store, and then you put it back in another place. And so it's the first time I've actually ever seen it. We've seen it up here on documents, but they actually have it in action. And they also have a stewardship district in his projects, too. Requires the 48% agriculture and the open space. I wrote that down. And a positive is it's not entirely residential, because I was assuming it was just going to be a whole bunch of homes and stuff. So the examples you gave, and also that if anything changes from what is approved today, it has to come back before us, or somebody in the future would have to do another comp plan change. I'm almost positive, correct, Mark? Okay, and that's all my comments and questions.
Commissioner Serbia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. All right. So I have questions for the applicant and staff. And to minimize wiping down the mic, who would like to start? Okay. So Lisa, what happens, if this is approved, what happens between the future development area boundary and this project?
Commissioner Serbia, nothing county-wise.
Do you think that development pressures change? Do you think that, does it change anything in those areas? Because I'm worried about that area, the 2 miles between the FDAB and this project, this great project, the great development on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
What happens in between? And who's responsible? Who's going to be held responsible for all that? Nobody knows what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's a big assumption. I can't assume.
The part of the project that allows the ROR and MU future land use category to be in this project without being on a major road, how does that affect the rest of the county? Is that now going to be a standard that's asked for in other areas?
I believe the text is written, so it's just in the overlay.
Okay.
I believe that's correct.
Does in your opinion, does the project protect our investments in public facilities, or does it challenge it? And maybe that's a question for the utilities guys and the roadway guys. Because, I mean, that's one of the things we consider in development is what's going to happen to our public infrastructure that we already have planned? Is it going to hinder or support it? Okay. Is this project consistent with Florida statutes, Chapter 163?
I think it depends on the way you look at it.
Okay. How many vacant lots? You told us how many vacant lots we have west of the FDAB line not too long ago. I don't remember. Do you remember?
I think based on the approximately 20,000 acres, the potential for 100,000.
So about 100,000 vacant lots remain.
Well, potential units, not
Potential
lots,
units. Okay. Okay. For staff, but it's going to be those utility guys in the back. Isn't there a decentralization study going on in Jacksonville or something like that? They're looking at utilities and whether it makes sense to keep it under one umbrella or have it decentralized. Do you know anything about that study?
I know that there is a study. I haven't looked closely. I think it's still underway, actually.
And do you know if they're doing that because of a proposal like this?
Likely.
Probably,
Yeah. And other folks have dealt with it differently, like our friends in Collier in recent times. a similar proposal was made, and they just moved their line. Rather than taking the risk that they would own some broke-down infrastructure later, they just went ahead and bit the bullet.
So that's kind of what I see when I ask the question between the FDAB and here, what's going to happen? I think what happens probably is the line moves. You just move the line because you want to protect all of the county's investments.
I just opened that can of worms.
I'm sorry?
Did I just open that can of worms?
Well, I mean, I was kind of thinking that, but I was asking, is that what happens?
I don't know that I've been here that when the line actually moved in that regard, so I couldn't know. I know that's how other folks have dealt with it most recently.
Yeah.
I did do some research for that. Regarding your other question about what does it hinder or negatively impact our
Current public investment and
Yeah,
infrastructure?
if it's built properly and maintained properly from a utility standpoint, no.
Good.
But what we brought forth was what we had seen in years past, and certainly if they build it correctly and maintain it properly, it shouldn't.
Okay. All right, I think I have all the staff questions out. Can I talk to the applicant, please? And, this is such a good project. I just really have a lot of questions, and I wish that along with this presentation, and I'm just dreaming, that you guys came to us with a letter of credit and said, you know what? The cost of building that utility system is going to be X millions of dollars. And we've gone to the bank and we're putting skin in the game, and here's the letter of credit, because we want to make sure it will be built to advanced water treatment standards and there's no risk to the county. I would have felt so much better.
Well, let me say this about that.
Okay.
First of all, we're happy to work with Mr. Godwin and look at what was done in those other communities as to what they assured those places for and how they handled that. And I think we will do that between now and the time it comes back. If we do something like that, I think the appropriate time to do that is when we're looking at the village master plan. This is the first step in a boatload of steps.
I understand. I mean, I get that. I understand that. But also, when you get this approval today, if you get this approval today, the value of this land skyrockets. And there probably isn't going to be a big back step. If we've taken that step, we're only going forward. And it's bigger than Lakewood Ranch, you guys. This is bigger than Lakewood Ranch, so keep that in mind.
This is
31,000.
Nowhere near.
31,000 acres.
Lakewood Ranch is 31,000.
It's the biggest individual
The
project.
biggest individual project.
We've ever seen. That's
Okay.
correct.
Right, the first time we saw Lakewood Ranch.
First time was,
One
Lakewood Ranch was
project.
only like 2,500, I believe.
Okay. Okay, so let me ask you, what do you think happens between here and the FDAB if this gets approved?
Absolutely nothing, unless you change it.
Yeah,
You don't think development pressures change?
I don't, well, it's up to you all. I mean, but, no, I don't think so. We intentionally did this as an overlay that would only apply to very small possibilities. Because it's a very special project. And the answer to the question, I think, for this commission is you're not doing what they're doing, flat out. So the answer to that, look, anytime you do anything in this county, there's always something going on. People talk.
That's a fact.
So, but the answer to that question is, this is a special project, a special situation, and they are doing stuff that no one else in this county has ever done.
Right. What is the long-term water plan for the project? Is it just that the well credits will be transferred? Is there an equal transfer, or what is your long-term potable water plan?
I think, I'll let Bob come up here. I think the answer to that is, part of it will depend on how much as agricultural is being utilized. Some of that will have to be retained. Obviously, we're going to have a trade-off at some level with the water for the water plant, which, just to remind everybody, the water plant, the sewer plant, all have to be built to the standards that the county has. But Bob, why don't you come up?
The esteemed
Commissioner Lombardo.
Lombardo.
It's getting old, folks, it's getting old. And I'm not talking about me getting old. I think we said this in the application, but there's permitted capacity because of the agricultural wells right now, a lot of permitted capacity.
Right.
It's true.
We don't even think we would use all of that permitted capacity as this project turns into what we're proposing. But yes, those wells are permitted. We would just transfer that consumptive use over to the new potable water system.
Okay, so it should be an even trade.
It'll be some swap of whatever, but there's those rights there that we will be using to build the water plant, and the consumptive use is already there.
Is there a willingness to build the plant, the wastewater treatment plant, out to what would be needed at build-out initially?
You would not want to do that. That's when you get into problems, because engineering problems. You physically, we can't plop a 1 million gallon water treatment plant out there if you're only trying to generate a fraction of that. You have to build it in phases. And that's exactly what the Villages and Babcock and any large project did. And that's what we would be doing.
Okay. And was there ever any discussion between the master plan that's coming as the next step, between taking that master plan boundary and taking it all the way to the FDAB? Because like I said, I worry about between what's in the FDAB and your site. And is there a willingness to include that?
Well, that's up to the commission. There's no, we obviously, we can only control what we own. So the Lindsays have done what they think is appropriate, and it's up to the commission what you do in regard to in between there. But the intent, like I said before, the intention is, from our standpoint, this project is unique and stands alone, but that's certainly a possibility. That's a commission issue, question.
And so I hear what you're saying about the plant, Bob, that you would have to build it in phases. And I know you don't want standing water in pipes either. So that's quite a balance that you have to strike. Do you think you'll have enough flow at the beginning to make any size plant work?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
These things are all, can be engineered properly and have to be engineered properly. So, no, I don't have any question that can be done.
And regarding internal capture, that balance that we're going to have between commercial and industrial and residential, how long do you think it's going to take to achieve that? Do you have a plan for how these phases will be taken down? And again, I worry about impacts on all the other roads coming into town until you guys have that beautiful vision that you're talking about.
Well, it's going to take some time.
It's going to take time.
It does take time. And we are going to have a plan as to how that's going to go. Now, look, if General Motors comes in and wants to put in a plant on that site, that may change how that plan goes. But, or Amazon or anybody like that, or J.I. Case or, one of those agricultural things, which is who we're going to focus on. So I think the answer is we're going to work through the village master plan. There'll probably be phases to it as time goes on.
And I'll ask you what I asked Lisa. Is this project consistent with Florida statutes, Chapter 163?
Absolutely. And keep in mind, we have to transmit to the state as well, so we'll get their comment on that as well, right?
Yes, indeed. Okay. That's all I have. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Satcher.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is there a question from Attorney Barnaby? I apologize.
Not a problem.
And so the text amendment that was already approved with the Taylor property, has there been any conversations between you and the property that is to your southwest on that corner?
I'm not sure I can totally answer that question. The southwest,
Southwest, yes.
Southwest, towards 675.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Not, I don't think recently, there has not been any discussion with them at this point. I do think it would be, well, let me just say, leave it at that for right now. That is something that I think we would look at some point if they're willing to work with us
I
on that.
mean, just judging from comments, we'll see where votes end up, but I mean, I think things are looking positive for the project. One of the biggest encouragements to me, with it being in my district, is the fact that, there's not a lot of people here to oppose it that I see. Maybe they'll all show up.
On the phone.
Yeah, they could be on the phone. And my district is busy, a lot of, young working couples and that type of thing. But still, that gives me some encouragement. And then I don't know what adjustments we would need, but I wonder if you could end up, well, I'll talk to you about it later, but I wonder if there were a workaround that you could end up connecting.
We'd love to do that. Let me put it that way. I think that opportunity is certainly one that makes sense, and so we could.
I don't know the acreage on that, on that text amendment, and, but it might be worth looking into that property or Southwest and see if it fits the bill. It may not, because they tried to draw it narrowly once again so that only one property fit, and so it may not, probably won't, but it's something worth looking into. And so I also think back to, let's see, what is it? It's Cross Creek. And, Cross Creek was there were no homes there for years. It was just grown over, a big sign that was grown over, and one heck of an awesome pool.
Hey.
And they partnered with the YMCA to be able to keep the pool open, and we'd go and swim. And of course, now it's completely built out, and and those homes are finished out. So I mean, there is a little bit. I do take a little bit of security in knowing there's a market out there that's going to dictate how things go forward. So if you end up where the market isn't strong enough to move forward on something like this, because there's going to be a lot of investment required up front, and so they're going to need some type of. They're going to be confident enough as business people to move forward, I would assume, before significant building takes place, so.
Agreed.
So, Madam Chair?
Yes,
I was just to clarify, the Taylor Ranch text amendment was only transmitted. The board has yet to vote to adopt it. I'm just nitpicking to clarify.
I guess that's your job.
Okay.
All right, I don't have any other commissioners on the board, so we're going to go to public comment. Is there anyone from the public that would like to come forward and speak on this item? Okay, telephone calls? No. All right. We're going to close public comment. James, this is your day. Staff, any closing comments that you want to make? No. Okay. Applicant?
Short, very short. Thank you. I will note, just so you know, the Lindsays bought this property from a mining company.
Oh.
They have no intention, and they do not want to be mined, but that's what happened. I just want.
Mining and septic tanks.
But I think it's a tribute to them that they bought it from a mining company, and partially to prevent that from happening, because that was not right for the community, and that's one of the reasons they're here today. They want to do the right thing for this property and the right thing for Manatee County. The agrihood, by definition, should be in an agricultural area, and it will give you a buffer, because the development is on the interior, for all the properties beside us. We could certainly, if somebody wanted to come to us and talk to us, such as what you're talking about, or any of the other properties around us, we could probably do little satellites and make it work under the same sort of design. Happy to work with Mr. Goodwin, and we'll work with them on what the other communities have done, as I've indicated. And I was going to note that there was no opposition. And I think that's a testament to the work we've done, trying to move this forward. It's a great project. I think that's the primary reason, and we've worked very hard to meet with the community, so.
Commissioner Cruz?
Are we on deliberations?
Yes, we're on deliberations now. Thank you.
Nice. This has been kind of waiting and listening. Yeah, just everyone needs to remember now that we're deliberating here. This is a transmittal of a text amendment. This is not an approval of a project. And we got really, really into the weeds, asking very specific questions about a project when we're kind of looking at this conceptually as related to a text. I mean, right now, nobody up here could tell me what SMR is doing with their land, but we seem to transmit that one without a problem because we didn't get that deep. And we had half of Myaca in here screaming at us on that one. You know, so talk about things like lines of credit and specifics, I think it's a little outside the scope. The real question is, are we comfortable with the concept of having a village-type overlay someplace in Manatee County? And this is a case study in what that would seemingly look like, which we'd have to effectively approve twice more, at least, just once when the transmittal comes back and then once when the actual project, and that's where you really get into it. Because some people had said, you know, one of the questions on this was, would this set a precedent because of where it's located? I've seen this plan many times. I've seen this thing. I hope it sets a precedent. I love this project. It's basically what a whole town should look like in a microcosm. It's, you know, it's being built from the outside in. You got the heavier density inside. It buffers the outside for all neighbors. It's got live, work in there as long as we can ensure, like some of us have mentioned, that there's retail and there's employment. I mean, we always talk about the urban core, and one of the reasons I like the smart growth of urban core is because you can walk places. It keeps cars off the roads. Well, sometimes you can have an urban core in a rural setting, and it accomplishes the same thing. So, you know, for me, they're talking 30-year build-out for 7,200 homes. That's 250 homes a year. This is a long process. This is not like, let's turn State Road 62 into a 6-lane highway tomorrow because there's going to be a buildup at 301. It is a long process, and it's going to take them a long time to get this going. And, you know, I think you're going to start seeing that trend. So questions about how much do we have left west of the line is going to be a little less of a concern when we're talking 20 years from now. That answer is going to be meaningfully different. And because of the time it's going to take to get a CDD done and the infrastructure done and the utilities done, if you start now, you may not see your first rooftop for 3 to 5 years. So, you know, from a transmittal standpoint, I personally just think this is a great project. I think the whole concept is great. You know, what I would, you know, I even like the private utility. You know, right now, I get the concept of the central utility, but we have pipes all over, and every pipe goes from one lift station to another lift station, then there's a leak, and it goes someplace. You know, there's a lot to be said. There's pros and cons. I'm not saying one's better than the other, but having these individual utility systems where everything is self-contained does have its benefits as well. So, you know, I would personally, in my preference, would rather see this AGOS, which I love, be an actual requirement for this specific type of overlay. And I'd even really rather see it be less than 5,000 acres as a max, because honestly, I wouldn't mind seeing other people use this concept. You know, because I think if you do it right and you have that real buffer, I mean, I'll take the AGOS, take it from 80 to 40. You're still creating enough buffer where it's going to isolate everybody and increase the use of this, because I think it's a great concept. I think it's a great project, and I 100% support it. And I hope after the last thing we transmitted, which was much more contentious, this board at a minimum is going to transmit this for this point in time, because I think it's the right thing to do.
So you're not making a motion?
You want me to make a motion straight up? Well, I was giving people opportunity. Well, I don't have it in front of me, but I'll make the motion as written. I don't have it in front of me.
Let's just, let me nitpick for a minute.
Okay.
You know, there'd be two motions, I just want to make sure we get the record. One would be motion for a transmittal of Plan Amendment PA 1803, Ordinance 2117. That is a text amendment, as stated in the agenda memo. And there'd be another motion after that.
All right. Well, I'll so move to the motion you just read.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Cruz, a second by Commissioner Van Ostenbridge. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
There's no more talk?
All opposed, nay. I know,
Nay.
that was. I'm coming back to that. Motions come first.
So
All
didn't you
right,
just ask us to vote?
go ahead. I did.
She did,
Oh,
and we did.
Everybody vote?
I'm confused.
No, I don't think everybody did.
Okay, everybody listen. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
Nay.
That's too bad. It is 6-1 with Commissioner Servia being nay. All right.
And the second motion could be motion for transmittal of Plan Amendment PA 1804, Ordinance 2118, as stated in the agenda memo, and this is for the map amendment.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Cruz, a second by Commissioner Van Alstenbridge. Is everyone listening? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Madam Clerk, it is approved 6-1 with Commissioner Servia being the nay.
Madam Chairman, because I did not get a chance to deliberate and give you my comments, I was on the board. I was on the
Okay, well, we've
board.
got someone before you.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I was able to explain why I voted the way I
Explain
did.
why. All right, I am first on the board. I am really glad that we have actually gone ahead and voted for this. I'm excited about this project. I think that it's going to be a very positive and a very unique project for Manatee County. I think if you look at Manatee as a whole, you know, that's kind of what we do. And so I'm really excited, and I hope you all the best. And I know it's going to be tough. I mean, it is going to take a lot of capital outlay to get this going, and I'll have you in my prayers. I want it done. So congratulations on that. Commissioner Servia, you are next.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And the reason that I didn't support it is not because I don't love this project, love the concept. I think the planning is exceptional, but I just didn't have enough assurances that the county is not, it has too much risk in the bucket. We have too much risk without understanding how that risk is going to be mitigated and how other communities have done this, especially the utilities. You know, you guys we will always see private roads. People want to do private roads all the time. Nobody does private utilities. You know why? Extremely expensive. And so I kind of hope that you had a financial strategy that you were going to show us now, and that there was just some bigger commitments. The reason that I supported the Taylor Tract is because there was no risk to the county. That's exactly the reason, because everything was covered under the CDDs and the district that they had there. So that is the only reason why. I hope when you bring the master plan back that we'll have some of those questions answered, assuming we get to transmittal, which I'm sure we will. Thank you.
Commissioner Whitmore?
And, you know, Commissioner Servia has every right to vote how she does, and I'm glad, even though some were impatient, but I'm glad that you asked all those questions, because this is your bailiwick for 30 years, and I learn something every time. I wouldn't have known to ask some of those questions, but now when citizens come to me, at least I can recall some of them. So I respect that, and you're right. And again, when this comes back, I'm still worried about the traffic, the second access, because there were citizens that were very concerned, and they said it to me that there was no second access, and it wasn't guaranteed, and all this traffic is going on 62. And it wasn't the adjacent property owner, just so you know, it was other people in the community, believe it or not. But that's what I'm looking for when this comes back, and also the wastewater treatment plant, the water treatment plant. That is probably the most important thing that we would want to know as commissioners, because did we just say this is the first time we've done something like this, right? Yes, in Manatee County. I mean, this big. I'm sorry, this big, yeah. Just mobile homes and stuff, and none of us were here then. So, anyway, thanks, Commissioner Survey, for at least asking these questions that I wouldn't have known, and now if somebody asks, hopefully I can recall the answer. Thank you.
Commissioner Satcher?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, I came into this meeting and literally not knowing for sure what was going to be the best vote. But I just feel like with some of the points that were brought up, when you say, you know, they have by right could put 1,000 septic tanks there right in our watershed, but with this plan, they don't. To be very clear, this plan does not put any septic tanks in our watershed. And when you think about from the housing aspect, how many houses this adds, and the plan is for many of those to be affordable, that's valuable. And some of the things that, you know, Chair Bob brought up, you know, that we're going to be able to, you know, this is a good family, and so I'm excited for the Lindsays for sure. And I do believe that as we, you know, move on through the process, which I'm hoping for stables. I don't know if we get to approve stables, but anyway, I might move out there, all right, but I mean, because part of the whole idea is that you're being in the city, in the country, and sounds real close to heaven to me. And obviously, nobody on the phone or in person from District 1. I don't know what'll be on Parish Parents Network tonight.
ABC 7.
But we have to, and me as the district commissioner, where most of the growth is happening, I'll just speak to everyone watching at home. I have to pick and choose my battles, and so when someone comes with a good plan, I feel like we need to be sure to reward that. And when someone comes with something that's rough, you've seen me stand alone and vote against many projects that I didn't think, and I hope I'm wrong on those, but I felt like would not benefit overall the community. So thank you, and congratulations to you.
All right, that's it. We're going to go ahead and take a 5-minute break just to give them time to exit, and then we'll come back and do commissioner comments. Congratulations. All right, we are back. We're going to go straight to commissioner comments. Commissioner Van Ostenbridge, why don't we start with you today?
Hey, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thought you might like it.
So I'm going to start off here discussing the ongoing issue of beach parking out at Holmes Beach, of on-street parking to access the beaches. The issue is still ongoing. You know, we had a meeting with the mayor, Dr. Hopes, and I did. And after the meeting, I think we all thought it best to sort of let cooler heads prevail after the meeting and take some time to do that. Since then, Holmes Beach has hired Dave Ramba to represent them, whom we all know, obviously. And I've met with Ramba, and we had a productive conversation. And I just want you all to know that I always make it clear when I'm meeting with the mayor, Ramba, anyone, that I'm an individual commissioner. I don't speak for the entire board. Any agreement, of course, that we ultimately do come to would have to come before this board for a vote. And that is actually indicated in this letter that I'm about to read you as well. So anyway, after meeting with Ramba, I got sick. That cost me about a month of a pause in my life. But now I'm back at it, and I'm getting caught back up. So I wanted to start off by tackling this. Obviously, Holmes Beach has experienced some consequences for the actions that they took. And that has sort of escalated over the summer. Representative Robinson has stated that he is not willing to make Holmes Beach funding requests a priority in Tallahassee. And Senator Jim Boyd has made the same commitment and has actually taken some state funding that involved Gulf Drive off of the table until, and both of them have stated that is until this parking issue is resolved with the county. So, you know, Holmes Beach is in my district, and these are my constituents. And so as they start to, you know, their citizens are going to start feeling the impacts of the decisions that their elected officials have made. And as a result of that, a deal needs to be reached. So the letter I've passed out is what I intend to propose to the city. I feel that the terms are fair to all parties involved, which would be the residents of Holmes Beach and the rest of this county. And I'm going to read the letter and sort of walk you through it. And today I'm not asking for a vote from you. I'm simply, I don't want to get out over my skis. So really what I'm asking you is, as we go through this, are any of these terms something that you can absolutely not live with? Are they a total deal breaker before I go talking to the mayor? That's basically my question. Is there anything in here that you can't live with? So I'll go ahead and read the letter. Mayor Titsworth, I'm writing you today in hopes of coming to terms on a mutually beneficial agreement between Manatee County and the city of Holmes Beach. This document is not a formal agreement. This is a letter from one elected official to another meant to start a conversation that will lead to compromise. Manatee County taxpayers own and maintain all of the Manatee County's beaches. My goal is to provide fair and equal beach access to all residents of Manatee County. I believe this can be achieved while protecting the property, privacy, and quality of life of the residents of Holmes Beach. I do recognize that in the past, island residents have not received the level of service they should expect from their county government. And for that reason, I have in good faith already begun to try to relieve some of the pressures tourism has put on Anna Marie Island residents. Our board has taken a strong stance in support of the Love It Like a Local campaign, and I hope to expand this campaign in the future. Commissioner Whitmore and I have worked to alter the timing of traffic signals in Holmes Beach during PM rush hour, and I'm told that this is helping to clear your streets faster by more efficiently moving cars off of the island in the evenings. Our board has also recently unanimously approved Holmes Beach's request for WCIND grant to fund a new Holmes Beach police patrol boat. In our budget passed this week, we funded a new patrol boat for the Manatee County Sheriff's Office that will help to increase patrols along the Holmes Beach shoreline. And I have great confidence that a majority of the Board of County Commissioners will be agreeable to the terms of this proposal, and I hope that your commission will also find these terms fair to all parties. I believe these terms, if you believe these terms are unfair to Manatee County residents, please respond to this letter accordingly. So going to the terms, first are the commitments from Manatee County. Manatee County commits to continue county participation in beach nourishment program via TDC funds. The second one is really the big one, and the reason I wanted to bring this here, because it's a multi-million-dollar commitment, to construct a 3-level parking garage on county-owned property at Manatee Avenue and Gulf Drive. So where Manatee Avenue dead ends out on the island at end of the beach, that property there, yeah, I don't have a cost for you yet. But where it dead ends, I can tell you that Mayor Brown said they spent $13 million on their parking garage. So that's a 5 level, and it's, probably about the same general footprint. So at any rate, that is in here. It's property that we already own. I've gotten a lot of pressure to bring the proposal that we should purchase a Bank of America property and build a parking garage there. However, we don't own that property. The asking price, it was $2.5 million last I saw. There's also a lawsuit involved with that property at the moment, and it's on a corner and has double setbacks, and setbacks are 35, depending, as you go up in height, the setbacks increase in the city of Holmes Beach. Yeah, it's called a wedding cake. So anyway, so you're looking at double setbacks on the corner. So this would be a much, much smaller parking garage. And it's also probably 4 blocks from the beach, and the mayor has made the comment that a sky bridge or 2, pedestrian sky bridge or 2, would need to be built over State Road to get people to the beach. This is at the beach, so I'm sure we'll come back to this. I'll just kind of cruise on through, and we can come back. Okay. So number 3 is at these beach access points on the island at the end of all these streets, there are 4 or 5 garbage cans, big like you have at your house, big green garbage cans lined up, and they are only emptied on the days Waste Pro comes out there, Tuesday and Friday, and that's it. So they empty them Friday, and by noon on Saturday, they're overflowing, and they sit there until Tuesday, and that's unpleasant if you live on that street, and that comes back to quality of life. So I put in here that we would provide solid waste removal at beach access points, and what I'm thinking there is Saturday and Sunday that we would provide that. Enact weekly text messaging system to welcome visitors to our island communities and increase awareness of local rules and ordinances. During Piney Point, when we evacuated, Jake used a geographic text message that he sent out to people who lived only within the evacuation area.
Right.
And if that can be done, obviously, every Saturday, because these weekly rentals it's a weekly thing, Saturdays, they come in. Every Saturday, we could send out a text message to people on the islands and say, welcome to the island, blah, blah, glad you're here, from the TDC. And then here's a link to, the do's and don'ts, right? The top 10 do's and don'ts. And it could be everything from parking to what seems silly to us, but if you go to Publix out on Holmes Beach on a Saturday night after all these people have just arrived, forget about it. It's a madhouse in Publix on a Saturday. So even little simple things like that, like, maybe don't go to Publix tonight. Little things like that are really helpful. Just reminding them that they're in a community where people live. And then, of course, locals can just text back stop to opt out, and they don't have to receive this text message every week. Provide additional law enforcement for beach patrols when requested by Holmes Beach. I intentionally left that sort of open-ended because I want to wait to hear back from the mayor. What specifically does she want? Or do they need out there? Is it they need a little more funding? Are they asking for help on Labor Day weekend? Specifically, what is it? So I'm not committing us to anything there, just asking her basically what does she need. The same with make code enforcement personnel available when requested by Holmes Beach for parking and beach patrols. Same thing, just waiting to hear back what it is that they need. Work to secure a water taxi from the mainland of Manatee County to Anna Maria Island with a stop in Holmes Beach. We've discussed that openly here before, and it is something that Dr. Hopes is trying to secure and that Elliott are working towards. Enter into an interlocal agreement with the school district of Manatee County to provide overflow beach parking at Anna Maria Elementary. We did that on a couple sort of individual weekend basis, but I would like us to enter into something for set weekends and set days with the school district on a more annual or permanent basis. Operate the Manatee County Island Branch Library as a trolley park and ride station on weekends and holidays. That library serves the fewest number of residents of any of our libraries, and typically on Labor Day weekend or a beautiful Saturday or Sunday, the majority of the people on the island are at the beach and not at the library, so it tends to have available parking. And on Sunday, it's closed altogether, and on most holidays, it's closed altogether, so that helps. And the idea is people can park there, hop on the trolley, and they can ride around the island. So it's not really, unless the island's really busy, it's not really a beach access parking spot. It's sort of a long way to haul your water noodles and your kids. And then lastly, reconsider the City of Holmes Beach request for TDC funding for a multimodal transportation enhancement. I'm told that they are making some changes to that and hoping to come back here again, so, something to consider. On the Holmes Beach side, of what we're looking for as far as commitments, of course, number one is for them to reinstate on-street parking to pre-pandemic levels. That's sort of been the goal from the very beginning. Secondly is to repeal a parking permit program, because we don't want to ask to reinstate all the parking and they say, okay, the parking's open, but you have to have a permit. That sort of defeats the purpose. And to establish a program with reasonable restrictions that allows churches, all churches in Holmes Beach, to use their parking lots for beach parking fundraisers. Some of the churches have said they're not interested in doing this at this time, and that's fine, but they may change their mind as time goes on, or they may say, we only want to do it on the 4th of July or whatever it might be. So I just want them to be able to have the ability to do that should they choose. And then if we're going to, go through the effort of having a water taxi, of course, we want them to provide dockage for said water taxi. So that's number 4. And then lastly is to support all parking county initiatives that are listed in the agreement. You can't turn around and block us on building the parking garage, which we would have to apply for building permits with the city to build a parking garage in their city. And the same goes for the school and the library, where there were some attempts at one time to stop us from having overflow parking at the library or using, at the school, or from using the library for water taxi, or for trolley parking. So we would want them to be cooperative with those measures. That's it. Bring it on.
Commissioner Whitmore.
Most of my 52 years on the island have been in Holmes Beach, so. First of all, constructing a 3-level parking garage, and I had mentioned to Kevin about this, it's in the city charter, 35-foot height restriction, and it goes by 35 feet from the center of the street. That's how they do it, because the topography changes on the beach. So just so you know that. And would that be next to the surf shop?
Yeah, that would be public beach. We already own the land. and
No, I know,
there's plenty of
so, okay, and you'll work with the business, okay. Solid waste removal, at one point, we offered to do that, Ed had offered to do that, and the cities said, no, we'll take care of it ourselves, but the tourist tax won't pay for that, so just so you know, when you meet with them, it'd have to come out of the general funds, and I don't think the citizens would mind paying since they use the beaches. I mean, we could use that justification. Provide additional law enforcement for beach patrols. This year in this budget we just approved, I think they received $40,000 same as last year. They wanted $80,000 or $90,000, and I spoke to the mayor. I said, it was $10,000 when I came here. I actually came up with the number, and it had been that until recently. So, but this last budget they had wanted $80,000 or $90,000 for an officer. That's what they wanted it for. So just so you know when you meet with them, operate the Manatee County Island Library for a trolley park and ride. There is a trolley stop there. I had put it there, and but you want to use the parking lot, so I got it. But there is already a trolley stop right there. The Holmes Beach commitments. I'm kind of sounding a little bit like Reggie here. Reinstate the parking pre-pandemic levels. I would like you to figure out a way to negotiate a little bit. Again, 2000 history. We had 2000. And just you guys talk about it, and I'm not going to say firm with that, but you guys talk about it, and if that's what you decide, bring it to us.
If she says yes to that, are you going to vote against this?
No, I don't know. My house is for sale.
Okay.
No, and then the repeal, she's watching, I'm sure it's got a million
I did text
messages.
let him know.
A repeal parking permit program. I told you not too long ago, there is a parking permit for citizens. I don't usually swear, but I'll be damned if I'm going to pay for a permit, a place I lived for 52 years, so I won't do it, I won't do that. I think that was a way to get our citizens a parking spot, but we as citizens know when and when to park. I mean, it's not like we don't know. We don't go at 12 noon to the beach. We all live there, we know better. So I kind of agree with that. And then when we do the county parking initiatives, whatever, to do an agreement, or we do this parking garage, I'd ask them if they consider or negotiating waiving the parking permit fees, which we could use to offset paying for the garbage pickup, the law enforcement officer and all that, because their permit fees could be pretty high too. And just so you know, Sajay that worked here, Sajay, he just got a job there as their engineer.
Oh, where is he?
At Holmes Beach.
Holmes Beach.
Oh, wow.
Just started.
Called me right before
What's
he
his last name?
started there.
Sanjay? Ke, starts with a K. Anyway, okay. That's all.
Commissioner Servia.
Yes, thank you. First, I want to start by saying, Kevin, this is a really good approach. I really appreciate your diligence and staying on top of it. And, I love that, that follow through until you get to where you need to go. So I want to acknowledge that. The only comments I have are, this is going to be on your letterhead. And so I would soften it just a bit. Like the last paragraph on the first page, I would say, I have great hope that a majority of the BOCC will be agreeable to the terms, okay? Instead of,
Right.
and
Okay. I was
then-
hoping to leave here with confidence. That's why I brought it to you first.
well, I think there's there's a lot of stuff to understand and unravel, really.
Yeah.
And then on the second page, I would change the top heading to potential Manatee County commitments, okay? And I would use language like under number 2, pursue construction of a 3-level parking garage, instead of saying we're going to construct it, because there's a lot of moving parts to that, just one item. Seek weekend solid waste removal instead of provide it. You see where I'm going? Work to enter into interlocal agreement with the school district. Consider operations at the Manatee County Island Public Library branch to do a trolley park and ride. Ask the board to reconsider the City of Holmes Beach request. I would just put some of that softer language in there. That's just me personally. You can take that or leave that. But otherwise, I think that it's a very good letter, and I thank you for your diligence. Great job.
What's that? Make sure you spray a little something on it.
I was going to tape a $20 bill to it. It usually gets the job done when I do things.
Commissioner Bellamy.
Yeah,
I'm kidding. I'm
Yeah.
kidding.
that's normally the signature, the $20 bill. that's normally the signature. Okay, I am excited about this and in full support of it. But I showed Kevin my paper. I put cost by everything, and I think where we're going with this, in support of you, there's a lot of work that we have to get all of this taken care of. Which is, she recommended that you change the front where it says Manatee County commitments to potential, and I had wrote down desired, because that's where we're trying to go. That's where we're trying, and each item is going to have to come back for some type of discussion, negotiation.
All of them, yeah.
Right. But the only thing that when we talk to the school board about that agreement, and we start talking about the picking up the trash and everything like that, I just want to make sure there's specific language in there on Sunday evenings, right? That it's done by a certain time, so we know when it's when school comes back in, those kids, those parents don't have to see see a bunch of trash and things like that. I don't know how we get in front of that, but that's my only comment, to be concerned, make sure that we kind of have that specific communication so we don't embarrass the school district and embarrass our youth and everything like that. You continue to be a leader to get things done, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. And I have lunch with Cynthia Saunders next week, I'm pretty sure, the week after. And this is on our list of things to discuss. And this is just sort of, the mayor and I sort of writing things down on a napkin, right? I mean, after this, it goes to the lawyers and then look out.
No, it goes to the commission. I hate to tell you. The mayor has no power.
Well, no, but
Yeah.
it goes to the lawyers to come
Yeah.
up with the hard commitments and the hard agreements, and then it comes to all of us, of course.
There is an election.
Okay, I'm next. Commissioner Van Ostenbridge, I thought your letter was spot on. I'm not going to suggest that you make changes. You're the district commissioner. I'm going to go with whatever you suggest, and I know so far, I only say that, the only reason I'm saying that is because, with everything that's transpired so far, I think you've done a great job And I know that I can tell that you are truly trying to work together. And I know that you're going to make sure that the two of you work something out. So I'm in full agreement with however you want to word it, whatever you want to do, and I wish you the best of luck with this. I think you've done a great job so far with this.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioners, any other comments on this before we move on?
Okay, so my main concern was number 2, the parking garage, because that's we're not officially, committed to it, but the fact that I brought it up, and the reason it's on here is that personally, I was not for a parking garage. Right, neither was Commissioner Whitmore, but the people that I've spoken to on the island, including the mayor and the commissioners, everyone has asked for a parking garage. So I sort of conceded, and I looked up, and there are some decent-looking parking garages out there that you can build, and I convinced myself, it's 2022 or soon, and we can build a decent parking garage. And
What song is it that I keep thinking, talking about building a parking, there's a song.
And there could be, the idea behind the parking garage.
Drives me crazy, I can't think of it.
The idea being, there could be amenities there, right? There could be a decent restaurant there. There could be a bar there possibly. Better showers and locker rooms and that sort of thing for people to use. And then hopefully, if we build something very nice there, that draws people away from the side streets and out of the neighborhoods, and they say, let's go to the public beach because, there's one, we park in the shade, 2, there's restrooms, 3, there's showers, 4, we can grab a bite to eat while we're there. So, the idea would be that the parking garage would draw people away from the side streets and the neighborhoods. So,
All right, was that the only thing you had?
yes, ma'am, that's it.
All right, Commissioner Whitmore?
Just real quick, I just wanted to say, no matter what's going on with all the other stuff, I wanted to thank John Barnott for all his years of service at Manatee County. He started out in the Utilities Department, and he was a liaison for all the cities, the government. He was a government liaison for many years, and he did a wonderful job, and the county recognized that he was really good at customer service. And the reason why they hired him in the job that he had was customer service, and he totally turned the building department around, and our building community, our business community, had nothing but compliments for years and years. And as you know, I got like 3 calls from the business industry just last night, and everybody's kind of nervous now because they don't know, what's going on. But I know Scott Holtz talked to some people today and leaves some jitters. But I just want to thank John for all his years of service to Manatee County. And the other stuff, that's an aside. I think somebody that's been here 30-something years deserves a thank you for your service. Thanks, that's all.
Has he been here 30 years?
I think.
No.
I've
at
been
the
here
county.
15, and he was at Utilities.
You told me Ed hired him.
No.
Unless he left it.
Well,
No,
he
no,
was in
he was in
utilities.
utilities for years.
He was in utilities before he came here.
Yeah, but in '04, he was in utilities. He hadn't moved to the building department yet.
He was
And
utilities.
I think he had been there like, I don't know, 2 or 3, he hadn't been
Oh,
there long, I don't
98.
think.
I don't know his tenure at the county.
He's been here a long time.
Yeah.
But I echo your comments, Commissioner Whitmore. Thank you for saying that. We have to acknowledge those people who retire and who have helped us, and so thank you for saying that.
He did send a retirement. He was
Thank
retiring.
you.
So.
He sent, what did he send?
There's a letter. Well, we got an email. He sent it to the employees, an employee.
Oh, I haven't seen it.
Yeah. Or somebody sent it to the employees, probably probably we did,
I
yeah.
got it. I think it was Dr. Hopes. who
Dr.
sent
Hopes,
it.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe I did and I just haven't seen it or something.
Thing that's John Barnett retired. Yep.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. That's all it said.
No, there was another one that went out to the employees from Scott.
Right, that came from Scott.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that came from Scott.
that's all I know about. It doesn't matter. Anything else, Carol?
No.
Okay, Commissioner Bellamy?
Yes, I'll just echo what everybody's saying, what they're saying as far as thanking Mr. Bernard for his commitment to the county, but more importantly, his work and stuff that he's done out in the community. Take care of yourself, my man. Be safe. Done.
I just had somebody send it to me. He started with Manatee County in 2001. Yeah.
Well, thank you for your service, Mr. Barnott.
Yeah. Anything else, Commissioner Bellamy? Nothing else? Okay, Commissioner Cruz?
I got nothing.
Commissioner Servia?
No, thank you, Madam Chair, nothing.
Wait a minute. Nothing?
I think I've spoken enough today, right?
This is like our fifth meeting of the week, so.
That's, That was cool, Misty. Thank you. Commissioner Satcher?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to start just by expressing that I am grateful. I am grateful for the vaccines that were developed under the Trump administration and then implemented shortly thereafter. And so I'm in favor of that. And I am not an anti-vaxxer, and I am not anything of that sort. But I support the governor when he says that we should not be, employers should not be requiring vaccine passports. That's wrong to take someone who worked through this pandemic, put themselves on the line, risk their life, say someone working as a paramedic, and then suddenly require a vaccine passport from them. I think it's wrong, and I think it's also, the fact that they're not even considering natural immunity from someone who has already had COVID and gotten over it, even though scientifically that is much better protection than the vaccine. Not so much better that it's worth it to go get it on purpose. I am not saying that. I love the vaccines. I encourage everyone to go get one. But employers, I think that the stance that Governor DeSantis has taken is the right stance. And so employers in Manatee County, I would encourage you not to require and to look for excuses to fire your employees. It will not be, I don't think it'll end well, and I don't think it's the right thing to do. I think you need to stick with encouraging. There's too many stories, and people have their own individual circumstances, people that are likely to go into and have severe allergic reactions, and then there's other groups. There's groups of people in the United States of America that were experimented on for 40 years. They were given syphilis and not treated for it, and they were studied by the CDC, the Tuskegee study, and and that's many years ago. And I'm not saying that is what's going on here at all. What I am saying is that we shouldn't fire people that might be for a reasonable persuasion are reluctant to get a vaccine. So I just want to say I support the governor on that. And once again, I'll say one more time, because I want it to be clear to all the reporters here. I support the vaccine. I support it. I think people should go get it. And I used to say, especially if you're in a high-risk group, but now those high-risk groups are moving with the Delta variant. So even if you decided that you were not at risk earlier, you might need to reconsider that. And when I say not at risk, I'm talking about when you balance that versus the other risk or the other considerations that you have. But to be firing people that we were praising last year, we were praising them for going to work, and then now be threatening them, that's the wrong thing to do. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I guess I'm next. Ms. Shank, did you have anything before?
No, nothing.
Okay. The only thing that I really have is I just wanted to make sure everyone knew that Beverly Smock, who was at the BIA for 27 years, passed away, as all of you know, from COVID, and there's going to be a celebration of life for her at Gold Coast in Lakewood Ranch on October 1. Sorry, George, I had to say it.
Sarasota part.
Yeah, the Sarasota side of Lakewood Ranch. It's going to be October 1, and it's going to start at 4 o'clock and go until about 7. Casual attire, and in lieu of flowers, I thought this was really great. The family is asking for donations to be made in Beverly's name to Solve Maternity Homes of Bradenton. So, I just wanted to mention that. I mean, I think most of us up on this board knew her, and I don't know of anyone that didn't love her to death. So, on that note, as far as vaccine, and I had already planned on saying this, I had mentioned it actually to George earlier today. I think it was George. I haven't said much about the vaccine, but here's the thing. I've known many who have passed away from COVID, and Beverly couldn't get the vaccine because of her health. And the vaccine does make a difference. You know, we saw this in Kevin. So it's your choice, and no one should make that choice for you, I think, in my opinion. But for heaven's sakes, think about it. Consider the vaccine. It does make a difference. You know, losing one more life is way too many to this. And get the vaccine. It works. It might not keep you from coming down with COVID, but it won't be as bad.
Die most of the time.
Yeah. So, you know, I think we all know, I mean, Kevin, you know, he was very sick. And, you know, I've had them tell me that it was a good thing he had that vaccine, or he probably wouldn't be sitting up here on the dais with us right now. So get the vaccine.
And wasn't
Consider
it
it.
great that
And Madam Chair,
people encouraged?
can I just add, I agree with everything you just said.
Yeah, it's a personal choice. No one should tell you or force you to get it. That's not right either. And I know, and it's not right for you to be, you know, scorned because you want to get it either. It should be a personal choice to either yay or nay.
Madam Chair?
I'm just saying, please consider it. Yes, ma'am.
On that, I 100% agree. Of course, I support vaccines on all vaccines, you know, with kids and stuff when you go to school, but I don't think you should ever mandate it. We're getting these
Me
emails.
neither.
I don't know if you guys are. I thought maybe it's just me about passports and stuff. We've never discussed it, and I don't think we ever have any intention to. As far as what people do in their private businesses, that's free enterprise. I only know one business in Manatee County that's actually requiring customers to be vaccinated, and that's the Beach Bistro. Well, they ask you, and then they don't ask to see it, but you know what? He's still in business. I mean, I can't believe he even did that, but, you know, again, it's a free enterprise, and they'll find out whether it works or not, and they can do whatever they want, but we should never, as government, we shouldn't make it
No,
mandatory.
it's all a personal choice.
Right.
I think that the reason for that is because the Biden administration is trying to pass that any
Yeah.
company or entity with 100 or more employees or over 100 employees
Right.
is required. And if that actually goes through and DeSantis doesn't stop it, then we could sit up here all day long and say, we're never going to do that. But if they try to cram it down and they're talking about imposing very onerous fines if you don't comply, and
Even
doing it through OSHA just to kind of game the system.
Even government? I thought it was just private.
I actually had a conference call the other day, George, on that very thing with Dr. Hopes and, gosh, who else? Who else was it? Was somebody else on the call? Bill Clegg. Gosh, where's my brain? And, you know, because I was concerned when I heard, you know, about the president coming out with that, mandating the vaccine. And the bottom line is, I also called Kathy King, you know, and said, hey, I know, she called me back too. You know, where are we on this? What are we looking at? I mean, you know, is it possible that we could be forced to do this? And it's my understanding the state of Florida will file a lawsuit if it should come to that. Hopefully not. But, you know, again, I don't think, you know, you just can't be making people do something. I mean, this is America. Even though I think it's the right thing to do, you can't make people do it. You know, they've got to want to do it. So, you know, but they, you know, Mr. Clegg and Dr. Hopes, you know, are watching it and paying close attention to it as well. So, anyway, guys, great meeting today. Short meeting. Thank you for all that you do. This meeting is adjourned.